Wouldn't you know it? Wouldn't you know it? Like, seriously, as I'm about ready to go ahead and transition everything over for the podcast, what does it decide to do? It decides to reboot Discord, so everything is all bonkers now. Isn't that just the way I roll?
Audio from her.
I swear that
there
is,
you are.
yeah,
There we go.
yeah, that's lovely. It is what it is, I suppose. I'm gonna have to just.
We can hear you now.
Stuck the landing. Stuck the landing.
We can do this. Like, full ability. At least I kept this around. I don't know. Oh my god. Oh god. Everyone, welcome to the Newbcast podcast for the 21st of January. My name is MissMicheleJean, joined by a slew of Newbcast alumni as we're here to talk about gaming news and other gaming related discussion. Yeah, wow. What a trip. God, like, I don't know what happened there. I went to click one thing, so because we have a fourth person that's not on the screen, but they're here. And as I made that adjustment, Discord decided to go, nope, you're done. You're actually not gonna be on Discord. I'm like, no, f you. I'm gonna use you as I intended to use you. Damn it.
Oh my god.
Gosh. I just anyways, welcome to the show. I'm gonna go around the horn, talk to people, see what games they've been playing, what they've been up to, and then we're gonna talk about some gaming headlines, and then we're gonna get out of here by shilling the stuff that we do around here. I suppose with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and start things off with our guest that doesn't get to make it onto the show as much these days. Miss Theoracraft, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Woohoo! Bad.
Good. Welcome. Crafty, what have you been playing? What have you been up to?
So, two games that I've been playing lately. Apparently, I've gone indie. I've been playing Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, which is the latest game released by one of your guest alumni, Xavier Nelson, and is bloody hilarious. It's probably one of the best, like, funny critiques of capitalism I have ever seen in quite some time. Definitely recommend it.
Sure.
I've also been playing another indie shooter called Severed Steel, where kind of the gimmick behind it is that the character that you're playing is a one-handed assassin that has lost their other hand, so you can't actually reload guns. You pretty much have to plow people over and steal their weapons the entire time, every time you run out.
That's an interesting concept for a shooter game. Why don't you start with the first one? Like, what is some of the commentary like? Because I've heard of some of the punchlines, but as far as like the organ harvesting that you're doing, like, what's that about a little bit? Like, go into more detail about what that is.
The game itself is very, very minimalist. You're pretty much just looking at, stock charts, your ship inventory, the market, the request boards, etc. But it's kind of designed to capture that sort of harried feeling that people have from impressions of how the old stock exchange used to work, where everyone was there in person buying and selling and rushing to make a buck.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't keep up with that, as part of accessibility settings, they do allow you to actually adjust the speed of the market. but essentially you open trading and it gives you a matter of minutes to look over people's requests for organs and then find the best deals for them. And even in the middle of all of it, you'll end up finding, scams, you'll end up finding things that are incredibly questionable. As you're going through and progressing further and further in the game, you can accidentally end up feeding into giant conflicts, causing wars, resurrecting dead gods, accidentally causing a meteor that's made entirely of meat to obliterate a planet. Those kind of things.
That's totally normal. The usual stock exchange sort of stuff.
There's consequences for your actions and a dope soundtrack.
There you go. Yeah, I'm seeing it in chat. Repo the genetic video. Yeah, it's what it sounds like. Instead of the genetic opera, the genetic. It's game version. It's kind of a tie-in, right?
Also, one of the most interesting things about it that people have been talking about is the very last game to ever include Kinect support.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes, seriously.
It released.
No.
Did it technically release last year or this year?
I think it was last year technically, but yeah, one of Nelson's programmers, he's obsessed with. He's actually also found a workaround to make Kinect work with an Xbox Series X. He's declared himself the last Kinect developer.
Okay.
So yes, you can touch the organs with your fleshy hands via Kinect. Apparently, this feature got added because one day, the Nelson, who is the lead on it, got a message from the coder he was working with that essentially included a video of "this works now."
Wow.
And it was integrated into the game.
Wow.
Is that called feature bloat? Or are the features, like the organs themselves, just bloated? I just want to know.
Some of them are bloated. Some of them they're actually ordering in the hopes to bloat them into balloons for children's birthday parties. But
Oh my gosh.
Oh, all the details too. Lovely.
Ooh.
So so you're just so if it has Kinect support like that, where you can touch the organs with your fleshy hands, what's the likelihood to see a VR version of this thing too?
Oh my.
Pretty much
always reach out to them.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. The only reason the same coder didn't make Wii U gamepad support is because he couldn't find SDKs.
That's fair. Okay.
I think one of the most manic things about it for myself as a singer is the fact that because it's so harried and you don't want to waste any time, when you accumulate people's requests for what organs they need, you don't want to waste time going back and forth between the screens and risk another trader grabbing up a good deal on a good organ on you.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that it's apparently very common amongst all of the players that you'll get this little sing-song list going in your head of everything you need, and people will be like, eyeball, spleen, kidney, over and over and over again, looking through the list trying to find it to remember what they need.
Oh dear.
I feel suddenly better about some of the stuff I've been and I've been doing a lot of shooting, and that just makes me feel a little... Wow. Interesting. Okay.
I feel like I would lose some sanity just playing the game, knowing full well that I would be one of those people who would eyeball spleen kidney.
One quick question. Sorry, I just had one quick question. Have you met Chad Shakespeare yet? Because I know he always sneaks him into every game.
Yep. Chad Shakespeare is a real bastard and won't stop snapping up all the good stuff.
Oh dear.
You might be shooting people, darling, but capitalism is its own form of violence.
Oh boy. See, that alone, I feel like the commentary, the social commentary involved in the game just makes it worth it, right? And worth a look. And of course, the fact that it supports an indie developer just makes it that much better to do.
Yeah. Put that right on the desk, right alongside Papers, Please, and that style. But I like the idea of having something like Papers, Please that's a little bit more action-packed.
Yeah.
It's also only $20, so you're not going to get hosed for 60 like you would on a AAA game.
Yeah.
True.
Awesome. And what you were talking about, the one-armed shooter.
Severed Steel is definitely a lot harder for me to play, especially because of my arthritis and disability and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
It is really interesting, though. It's one of those games that's very much oriented on like timing and flow.
Mhm.
It's definitely got a lot of aspects of like Mirror's Edge to it.
Oh, sure. Okay. Solid game there. So if it's mirroring that a little bit, or even, would you say that there's some inspiration coming from Mirror's Edge, or?
I haven't dug too much into like the developer to be able to tell whether or not it was a direct inspiration or whether it was just happenstance that's sort of the feeling they ended up encompassing, but that's the most direct comparison that I could draw if people are trying to get an idea of what it's like.
Gotcha. Okay. So, is that, I suppose, I know that Organ Harpster has been one that you've been doing a bit of coming down and witnessing that myself. Anything else that's really gotten your attention for games, or?
Not as much. I've been super busy with the day job, but those two have been the main ones I've been playing a lot lately since I think it was sometime last month. I actually not only 100%ed all the achievements on Control, but I also went back and found every single piece of intel in the entire game.
Gotcha.
The only things I am missing are PlayStation exclusive.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice. Okay. Cool. Well, Theoracraft, thank you again, and welcome to the show. Our off-camera voice, our disconjointed voice of the evening, Elijah, Mr. Unabridged Gamer, welcome to the show.
Can people hear me?
They can hear you.
Discord wasn't responding. For a second, Discord wasn't working.
We got the radios in. We're full Phasmophobia over here, but they can catch you, Apparition. Please tell us, what have you been playing?
What have I been playing? Well, the most recent thing I can't actually talk about because it's under embargo, but it's very good. And all I'll say is it's very cold, so it's very appropriate for the winter season. Besides that, what have I been playing?
Yes.
Well, I would describe it less as playing and more as wasting 16 hours of my life in Biomutant. That was an experience that did not go well. I've been keeping up with Paladins. Very excited for when the new Hero 7 drops because he looks like a lot of fun. He's basically Dishonored as a character, so that should be tons of fun. But yeah, the biggest thing really right now for the longest time has been either Biomutant or Sniper Ghost Warrior contracts. So I've had bad Eurojank and good Eurojank. Because, like, Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts is essentially Deathloop, but it came out in 2018, and it's infinitely better, even if it doesn't have as many style points. Like, there's actually a lot of incentive for going round and round and trying different things. Like, if you want to unlock all the cool stuff, you have to try things all kinds of ways, and ironically, in a game all about sniping, there's one map where it's literally like, survive this entire map with only a knife. I have still not figured that one out yet. But I did manage to ghost an entire level, which is a new thing for me that really was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And there's some nice accessibility options and stuff like that. So that's tons of fun. Whereas, y'all would agree that pretty much every game has like a central pillar. You know what I mean? Like there's one core aspect that everything else is built around, right? Biomutant doesn't do that. It doesn't have a central pillar. It literally changes what the entire campaign is about. 3 times. Maybe it's Monster Hunter. Maybe it's about the end of the world and getting people on an arc. Maybe it's discount Far Cry with way more repetitive combat that's way less satisfying. Maybe it's a collectathon. No one has to choose anything logical. I understand. Like, y'all know the typical, like, you know, you save a village from being rampage story. You go in, you kick the bad guys' asses, and it's like, they need some help around town. Okay, obviously, this means I'll just do some small quests in the area, right? Wrong! Instead, you will tread far and wide, beating up random frigging wooden art projects along the road to collect enough wood for these people to rebuild their village, because that is the only way to do it. There's tons of trees around, but you can't cut them down. Doesn't matter how big a sword you got, that's not the logical solution. It's like an entire game built on the logic of the worst adventure games of the 90s. But it's trying to be an open world action RPG, and it melts my brain!
So, rave reviews.
Stellar.
Technically, you were raving. So
Yes, this is true. Look, I think you just became a quote for the review blocks on the front page of this game, right? Rave reviews, the Unabridged Gamer.
Oh my gosh. Everybody also, for the record, everybody was like, oh, Elijah loves weird games. He's going to love this one. Yeah.
It's
no.
true.
We've officially hit too weird for Elijah.
that's fairly impressive, I must say.
I feel like a game has to get to a certain level where it's too weird for Elijah. Like that is just a whole nother level as far as like what you're describing to me, and what I'm hearing is that this game sounds to have an identity crisis going on, and instead of having a clear picture of what the developers wanted, they're like, yeah, we like this, and they threw that in for a while, and they're like, no, we actually like this, and they threw that another dash of something else, and they never bothered to extract the other mechanics of the game, so you're just stuck with a slapdash combination of things to make a game.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can enjoy a game that takes different pieces of genres. Like, you want to put a little bit of roguelite into your game, sure, absolutely, go for it. But, like, there has to be a cohesive logic between it, and it sounds like that's not what's happening here.
No, understand, there's a random section where you're just in a mech suit, and this mech does not come out in any other part of the game. It's just in this one random quadrant where the environment turns into looking like something out of Fallout that is divorced from everything else, has a boss encounter that has nothing to do with pretty much anything else. They just do this. They do this constantly. All of it is like someone took the basis of improv, of never say no, and went so committed to that fundamental belief, that fundamental central focal point of just never saying no, that literally everything that everyone wanted is in there, and it's also horrendously broken. Like, I could not use a healing item for the entire time for like the first 3 hours I was playing, because half of the quick select menu wasn't working. And then in another session, the inventory broke and everything looked like the one steel gauntlet on my back. I couldn't actually see, is this a pair of pants? Is this a shirt? Is this a gun? Anyone can guess, because I'm trying to get to clip through the giant metal gauntlet. It just does this. I almost want to call it impressive, but it's more horrifying. Just how utterly random every single thing is. There's 2 modes of shooting. There is both precise and auto lock on. There's multiple camera systems fighting over each other. I've never seen a chimera of systems quite like this. The one nice thing is that the art style is nice.
If you're live in chat right now, hold on. If you're live in chat right now, if you're watching the live show right now, can we get some F's in chat for Elijah's mental health? Because I think it's gone.
On the other side of things, if you want to not be aware of whether or not you have pants, this sounds like the game for you.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I forgot. There's one more thing. Also, the storytelling is understand, the story itself is the most basic thing possible. It is such a traditional, you're a Ronin, your village got wiped out, you gotta live up to your mama's history and that, and, bring balance to the world and all of that nonsense. But they tell it so strangely. You start off in the game in medias res, but you don't realize it's in medias res until later when you meet a guy who tells you that he knows you,
but then you never actually see him in any of the flashbacks, as far as I can recall, for when he's supposed to know you. And the tutorials happen in flashback, but then you have the equipment suddenly in the present, and then after you're past the opening bit, then you're suddenly being confronted with flashback boss fights to the kids who used to pick on you, who confusingly are now all the tribal leaders of the area. So even the guys who picked on you, one of them you have to side with at some point, which is really weird that never comes up. But also, in these flashback boss fights, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. You still get the upgrade at the end. So literally, trying hard to win is actually ill-advised. And that's not when this happens. Because when you're doing the Far Cry bit, where you're taking over other tribes and stuff, after you've done it twice, the game is like, this is kind of boring. You've impressed everyone else. They're offering to surrender now. Do you want to let them surrender and just bypass the rest of this really, really tedious section? Or would you like to keep doing it 3 more times in a row? And I've never had a game literally just basically throw up its hands and go, you know what, yeah, let's just skip everything. This is not working. Like, can you name another game that does that?
I don't think I know of one. I mean, it's one thing if you have like a mini game in something that's like, oh, play this as you like, but like a main concept of the game.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. I'm drawing a blank. Like, I can't think of anything that would do that. So that's a no dice for me, I guess.
Yeah. So again, it's like, that's why every now and then I just go back to Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts, where it was like, everything's simple. I'm playing as a Bond henchman. I'm taking out awful people with a sniper rifle. It feels good. There's really nice level design. And I can just listen to whatever I want in the background as I destabilize fictional Siberia. It's basically the plot of the game is that Siberia declares its independence from Russia, and no one's quite on board with that. So, of course, they try to destabilize them as quickly as they can. But, it was nice. It's like, okay, I'm not crazy. There are good Eurojank games. Hell, City Interactive made a genuinely good game. City Interactive made a genuinely good game. There is still hope. And then I go back to Biomutant, and I would be going, why? So, mostly that, and also, yay, Paladins. And the thing under embargo that we'll get to talk about later next week.
Gotcha. Okay, so the embargo is next week when you can talk about things.
Oh, I'm so excited. I have some guesses as to what you're talking about, and having given no information in advance, I am very excited for something chilly.
Yeah, it's quite serious. But, that's all I can say. There is one thing I do want to shout out, though, that I am going to be taking a look at, and it's not under embargo that I can say I'm going to be taking a look at.
Sure.
And I actually told Crafty about this. Blacktail. Baba Yaga. Action RPG. Fantasy. FPS. With morality choices and everything. Like, you are molding Baba Yaga either into the creepy old wench who eats children, or into an anti-heroine who protects the forest. Kind of, like the Queen in the Woodborn from Stepan Sejic. It's really cool looking. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It reminds me a lot of like Xenoclash and other Ace Team games. And there's some preview playthroughs already of it now. I'm going to be looking at the demo soon, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. It already looks so polished, even though it's easily like over 6 months or more out from release, and just everything about it is super compelling, and unlike Biomutant, has a clear central focus about what it wants to do with all these different concepts.
So, in regards to, you were talking about a morality check system. To what degree are we talking about here? Because I feel like that was a basis of some hype behind some games. Gosh, that's probably about 5 years ago now. Oh, God, it's been that long. That it was a feature in a very popular game 5-6 years ago, and it's what instantly comes to mind to me. So just walk us through, like, what does that morality thing look like? Is it an intricate part of it, or
I haven't gotten to actually, like I said, I haven't gotten to actually play the demo yet myself, but
Okay.
they very specifically outlined that there will be, like, you will unlock, for Yaga, she will have various abilities that you will unlock, and there is going to be a morality system. Like, there's a separate tab in the menu that you can see in the demos and stuff like that. So it's very clear that that's going to be a core focus, but overall, they definitely seem to be going for more of just like a classic Slavic mythology sort of mentality to it all. So, like, everything is both creepy and cute at the same time, and there's a lot of unique use of powers. Like, your bow and arrow will be able to use a lot of different elemental effects, and even from the looks of it, teleport you to certain places and all kinds of stuff. Like, it looks super creative in a lot of the ways, and given that it's going for, you know, that very distinct, more a matter of guardian, like, literally they lay out as you're either a guardian of the forest or the dark legend. So it doesn't sound like you will become Commander Shepard, everyone loves me, look at my lovely assortment of love interests situation. It looks much more like you choose how cruel you will be and how much you will align with nature in terms of your bitterness, which I don't know how it's going to come together mechanically, but given everything else they've shown off so far, I'm very curious, because it looks like, if I'm understanding, like, even how the trailers present the contrasting mythology of several, like, they have this one trailer where it's a bunch of kids offering different takes on what Baba Yaga is. It looks like there might even be like a neutral line to walk, or at least that was something that they had on the cards at some point. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where this all lands.
So yeah, okay. The reason I was talking about the morality, yeah. So you mentioned Mass Effect and Commander Shepard and whatnot. Not obviously a morality system there. Definitely back in more of a focus of attention because of the Legendary Edition that came out early last year. I was actually referring to the morality system that's in Undertale, because that has a huge impact on the game and how it turns out. And I was wondering if it was geared more like that particular morality system, because whether
I haven't
you
played Undertale.
What?
I haven't played Undertale, so I don't know. Like, I know of it, and I've been told many different things of it, but, like, yeah, it's part of the backlog.
You know, there's half a mind for us to just, like, transition this podcast purely to you playing Undertale for the rest of this right now, because you need to.
Yeah.
It's
But that being said,
go ahead.
No.
One of the things that I think Undertale does very well is not make it incredibly obvious what decisions you're making when you're making them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do get what you mean, and I have seen that done well in other things. Actually, most recently, the Guardians of the Galaxy game. I really like how a lot of, like, that is a game where the most pivotal boss fight doesn't involve shooting a laser blaster. It's entirely about having the nuanced conversation to help a young girl mourn her mother's death. Like, yeah, so I get what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Guardians of the Galaxy is a really good game. Everyone should play it. Holy shit, Eidos Montreal kicked it out of the park.
It's true. I do want to ask before we transition out on this. Does everybody else know Baba Yaga from something? Because, like, I did not get any fairy tales with Baba Yaga as a kid, and I'm just like, suddenly Baba Yaga's everywhere. Baba Yaga's in Storybook Brawl. Baba Yaga's in this. I'm like, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but Black Book I just got over the holidays, and I am so excited to play that at some point here soon. So I'm seeing a lot of interest in, like, this Slavic folklore, but I know nothing about it.
I got a little bit of it growing up, but not that much, particularly because, as far as Slavic stuff goes, like, I'm descended from Czechoslovakians, but because of the political ties of a lot of my family, like, they stopped speaking Czech after Prague Spring and, like, pointedly married out of their names. So, like, some of the only things that I still had growing up from that origin is, like, learning to make Ukrainian paisanki from my mother and things like that. I don't know where to check. Even now I'm going back and trying to learn Russian. That's kind of been my pandemic project. But I have seen more and more of those tales coming over. I don't know if it's so much like a craze as it is just the world opening up more and communication improving and a lot of these kind of stories getting swapped around, and especially when we end up exhausting a lot of the local folklore, people start looking for inspiration elsewhere to bring to a new audience to freshen things up a bit.
Yeah, to double down on that, like, we're also seeing a lot more Indian mythology be pulled upon with things like Raji, which came out not too long ago, which is essentially, kind of God of War, but it's about a young girl trying to save her brother, and is, made. It's another indie one that came out a little while ago. I think it was even free on Epic Game Store for a little bit, and I think that's among several that have come out. I'm also seeing like African lore. There was recently a card-based roguelike that was based around, I believe it was specifically South African mythology and stuff like that. So like, yeah, we're finally seeing people figure out that there's more than just Norse mythology that you can pull from. So that's really exciting overall. As for Baba Yaga, probably what didn't hurt, given the timeline of everything, is that she was also the center point of like one of the most popular DLCs for the Tomb Raider games. So I wouldn't be surprised if she helped also, her presence in that DLC helped spread things a little bit, because basically everyone, regardless of how you felt about Rise of the Tomb Raider on a whole, that DLC is frigging fantastic, and is, honestly, it's got a better final boss fight than the actual main game itself.
Well,
so that's probably...
On top of that, the mention of Baba Yaga is also in some movies in the last decade too. So it's also possible that you've heard it in movies and other media like that. As again, like Theora pointed out, just looking for inspiration from folklore other than what we've seen from like Norse mythology or what we traditionally see here in the United States, as far as that's concerned. And that's probably where you probably cross paths with it, or some people are cross paths with it in some of those other medias early on, and more developers and more storytellers are finding that inspiration and using those as a focal point of their stories now. So it's not the same story over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Does that cover everything you've been playing then? That's always a scary question, but does that cover everything you've been playing?
I know everyone's expecting me to have played 5,000 things, but that's really in terms of like actually playing, not just trying things a little bit. Actually, I'm sorry, no, you made me remember something else, but it's very brief. I promise you it's very brief, because literally it's only 30 minutes long. I managed to get my hands on a canceled Elder Scrolls game.
Oh.
Elder Scrolls Travels Oblivion for PSP, which it's a milestone build from Climax, the same people who would go on to make Silent Hill Origins and Shattered Memories, more recently the Assassin's Creed Chronicles series, and almost made what looked like was going to be one of the best Legacy of Kain games before it got canceled because Square Enix are idiots. Over an hour of that game has leaked online, and it looks gorgeous. But regardless, this thing is incredible. Like, seriously, the Oblivion game is just... It's jaw-dropping what they were able to pull off, and it has been demonstrated that it works on PSP hardware. Like, you can walk around whole villages and stuff. There's functioning combat, magic. They basically completely rebuilt the user interface and everything. Like, this was fairly early on in development, and this looked like a vertical slice that, with a little more polishing touches, you could have shown off at E3. It is genuinely amazing. Unfortunately, Bethesda were not willing to give them enough time and money to handle some optimization they had to do due to tech issues. So increasingly, the game kept getting shrunken down more and more, and a lot of cool concepts were going to be left on the cutting room floor, and eventually they just had to give up, despite even Todd Howard being impressed by it. It would have been, essentially, instead of focusing on the main game and just updating it to PSP, it would have been a side story, and it would have been like, yeah, those Oblivion gates, they didn't just open in Cyrodiil. They opened up everywhere. You were going to go back to Daggerfall, and it was going to be torn apart by these Oblivion worms, specifically cited as being inspired by the worms from Tremors. and
Garboid. Okay.
Yes, there would have been graboids in the Elder Scrolls canonically, and you would have been going around closing all the other Oblivion gates. The protagonist of Oblivion proper just couldn't be arsed to get around to. But unfortunately, not much exists beyond this demo because it was a matter of it was the right team, it was the right IP, but it was the wrong time. Like literally, they were even fighting to have enough dev kits. There are PS2 versions of it simply because they had more PS2 development kits than they did PSP development kits. They would get it working on there and then they would downscale it a bit more for PSP and stuff like that. But still, an incredible achievement on their part. And I'm glad that for those who know where to look, it exists and is out there because it is truly another amazing game that Climax should have been able to make but wasn't able to.
So, is it bad that part of my mind just kind of went, wait, since when was Bethesda ever concerned about bugs in their game and optimization and such? When did that happen? When did that happen?
Apparently, whenever they need to cancel something, whether it's the Elder Scrolls Travels Oblivion or Prey 2, just, anything that might actually be interesting.
So that's fair.
There's too many bugs, even for us.
Jesus. Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Elijah, welcome to the show. Thanks for sharing that as well. Mr. DizzahGee, welcome to the show.
Hey.
How goes? What have you been up to? What have you been playing?
It goes all right. Got a couple of games for the holidays. Black Book I am holding on to specifically to stream because it's a beautiful little roguelike. I got a chance to play like 30 minutes of it or so when I first got it, and I'm just so in love with the concept. It's a card building roguelike game. So I'm already kind of in this universe and ready for it. But the concept is that you are a witch that takes care of your village. And as a witch in lore, you have to handle demons that you can handle a number of different ways. You get to make moral decisions about how you help out villagers or hinder them. And you deal with the big things that are around as you try to collect these seals, which are basically the MacGuffin of the series. I don't know how far it will go, but I am very excited to see, and it's a really good start so far. So that'll definitely be worth exploring.
Okay. Sorry, I remember a skit I was involved in last year that involved MacGuffins, and I can never hear that word the same again because of that damn skit. But please continue.
I mean, MacGuffin is so nice, and I'm going to use it so many more times now that you've said that, just to be clear.
Oh my God.
Anytime that there's an important thing. But yeah, just overall, just very solid. I've also had The Messenger on my wish list since, I think, PAX 2019.
Okay, yeah.
A very smooth-moving, platformer a la Celeste, but like Celeste mixing in with a little bit of Ninja Gaiden.
Okay.
Maybe even Castlevania-ish, like early Castlevania style, but the main kitsch of the game is that you will play some of it in what is like an 8-bit version, and you'll play other bits of it in a 16-bit version, and the world will be a little different between them.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yep. I've seen that type of mechanic used before. It's always interesting to be able to transverse the two type of worlds too, because it, especially if now are the characters like cognizant and aware of the shift and whatnot, or are they not aware of it?
Oh, they are entirely aware of it. It is. Yes. It's the sort of game that fourth wall breaks everywhere to the full humor of everyone involved. And
fantastic.
There is a big bad that you legitimately are like looking forward to defeating, but it's not pretending it's not an arcadey adventure, and I think because of that, it works exceedingly well. Okay. The mechanics are smooth, I will definitely say, and you've got to have perfect mechanics when you're doing a platformer.
Yeah. If you don't have those smoother mechanics, and there's anything that can cause interruptions with that's enough to be maddening and very ragey about your game. So it's good that that's a thing. See, I'm trying to. Evil Land is what kind of came up in my mind when you're talking about the shifting of like the 8-bit and the 16-bit, like that in that same vein of the characters are aware of the world change because of that they adjust how they act and react in the world, and I appreciate that like level of meta involved in storytelling, because it's just how do I want to describe it? Like, it just makes sense for the characters to be like, wow, something's really up about the atmosphere around here. I can't really, wow, it's a lot blockier. Why can't I do this anymore? Wait, why can't I do this anymore? And that type of thing is I always appreciate. So seeing more games take advantage of that and do that is always refreshing to see, and it just seems lighthearted and it can be very much appreciated. So,
oh yeah, I would say if you are looking for a brand new platformer to get into, or rather a new platformer for you, and you've already played something like Celeste, enjoy this. It's got some nice challenges. I will say I don't think it's quite as difficult as Celeste is to get into. The boss fights are fun. I could see it being a real joy to do something like speed running with, which HEDQ was just earlier, by about a week, and was absolutely phenomenal. So I've definitely got that speedrunning mood in my mind when I'm watching or playing anything now.
mm-hmm.
And the soundtrack is banging.
See, a good soundtrack is always a nice little extra to include in anything, and always like hearing that too, especially in indie games and smaller titles. Hearing about a good soundtrack is just so good to hear. Yeah,
I think especially with indie games, if you have a really good soundtrack, your game can actually be like subpar, and I will still play it and I will still enjoy the heck out of it just because I'm jamming all the way, you know?
Yeah, I don't think you're exclusive in that club either. I think there's plenty of people that would actually end up playing an indie title if there's a good soundtrack to it, because I think what partially does it is because of the nature of some games, or at least how some indie titles are done, there's a level of nostalgia that's involved in it, and it just triggers and makes people just get involved in that and get lost in that element of the game, and you're able to score points and brownie points with the player base because of that.
Oh, for sure.
I'm 100% going to send you a link to the Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator soundtrack then, because you will be jamming.
Oh no. See, I'm afraid of the capitalism critique. I'm too scared to actually.
Just to put into context, my favorite track on the album is called A Galaxy of Children Who've Only Seen Red.
Oh.
You've awakened the hive!
Oh dear. Okay.
So definitely check out The Messenger and enjoy all of the amazing soundtracks that you find in any game.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I have just recently been getting myself through Tales of Arise, which I've been meaning to play for a very, very long time.
Okay.
Key premise of Tales of Arise. Hey, if you don't know Tales, I don't know where you've been. It's a JRPG series that has stood the test of time. And you got your Rinans and you got your Danans, and I don't know. The Rinans are not very nice people, and you are a Danan who has been oppressed by them. In your iron mask that you don't know about, and of course you don't know the backstory of your history because JRPG, you go ahead and free yourself from the confines of your lords and try to save the rest of the people of Dana from similar fates.
Okay.
Very
nice.
Story progresses in a lot of different ways that are super, super, super spoilerific, but you do get a cast of 6 characters that you get to play around with. At least I think it's 6. If I am going to see more characters this late in the game, they better tell me now.
No, you're gonna get one. You're gonna get one like an hour before the end of the game. It's gonna be your 7th and final, and you're not gonna know how to utilize that last character. You know.
I mean, if they do it a la matches in Chrono Trigger spoilers, like that's fine by me. And if you're spoiled by Chrono Trigger spoils, like, what are you doing?
A little late for
but
that.
Yeah, very solid, very good combat style. Lots of different like real-time mechanics to enjoy with it. And it is definitely your super stereotypical JRPG. I haven't really been like wowed by the twists and turns, though there have been a lot of them because they super telegraph and things like that. One thing I will say about Tales of Arise that I really like is if you want to explore the universe, they give you a lot of opportunity to have dialogue between your characters and things like that give you more of the subplot, but you're not required to do most of that.
Okay.
So depends on how much you want to get into it.
So it's a lot optional if you want to really delve into the story of, or like the backstory of it, but it's not required, so you're not overwhelmed with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Very nice. Okay, so Tales of Arise and The Messenger. What else have you what else has tickled your fancy besides those particular games? Or are those what been grabbing your attention the most?
That's definitely been most of it. I need to get myself back into Final Fantasy XIV and continue to explore the new content because I haven't gotten through the main expansion yet. I'm about halfway through.
Okay. I think since the expansion came out, I have had a total of 10 minutes? No, half an hour. Half an hour in Final Fantasy XIV.
Is it because of the wait?
My experience with the queue wasn't that bad when I tried the one time I tried it. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what it is about Final Fantasy XIV that's made it really hard for me to really get involved in it. Besides the monthly subscription, it's. I mean, there's a lot of things about it that make it a good MMO, and I get that, seeing as it's probably the top MMO right now, which is really odd to say about Final Fantasy XIV considering where it came from. But here we are, nearly 8 years later, and it's the top. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a strange universe we're in. That was very unlikely. And yet here we are with a game that is decidedly very different than even like A Realm Reborn was. And they've just been continuing to add in ways that have been great every single expansion. The only thing that I can say is the first hour and a half of the expansion is by far the slowest.
I think that's kind of what it is. And even A Realm Reborn right now, if you're trying to do Realm Reborn, it's just slow.
Oh yeah,
it's slow. And
the first 50 levels you just have to grind through, and you need at least the core story quest, which I mean you have to do anyways. Don't do anything extra, please. Save that for your subclasses when you want to just get experience, but even then, no.
Yeah, see, and that's what just gets me about it. Because even with MMOs, I still keep going back to Guild Wars 2, and maybe that is maybe what ArenaNet did with that particular game just really ruined it for me, because the pace of combat in that particular game is so different than what you see in Final Fantasy XIV. It makes it easier to engage in. I get that Final Fantasy XIV is very lore heavy and there's a lot of good storytelling and there's neat mechanics. I love the idea of being able to switch your job and you have one character with the various jobs that you can assign and you level up the jobs. Love that concept instead of having to have 15 character slots.
Guild Wars 2.
Right. Love that. But it's the speed that Guild Wars goes at is why, if you talk about MMOs, that's the one I'm going to keep re-engaging with, because it's just the speed of it. And maybe that's what it is. You're asking what is it that makes me not engage with Final Fantasy XIV as much? And I would probably argue that. It's just, and while there are expansions coming out for 14 that make it good, I mean, End of Dragons comes out in a couple months.
Yeah.
Wait, when the End of Dragons hits, are we not allowed to imagine dragons?
No.
Wow.
No.
You will no longer be allowed to listen to the main theme of Arcane.
You can't hear it here, but he's being shame-belled right now.
Shame.
That is
shame.
That is actually a disappointing life to live, because such a great track.
It's seriously, I think maybe that's just what it is. I don't know. I can attempt to log in again, but they probably took my my account and like, oh, it's inactive and blah blah blah.
Actually, your comments on the pace of combat has me curious, because I don't know if you've ever tried it, but then on this scale of pacing, where does the Old Republic fall? Because that's one where usually either people play it in spite of the combat or entirely because of it. It's one or the other. So I'm curious where that falls for you if you played it.
The combat for that was slow too. I mean, if you're going to talk about the combat in the Old Republic, and the way it works, it was hot button MMO, and if you're gonna do that, then I'm sorry, I'll just go back to WoW, because at least there I know people.
I mean, you know how much of a Star Wars fan I am, and even I just got bored with the Old Republic.
I'm pretty sure the Old Republic is the only MMO where I've actually fallen asleep at my desk.
Yeah, I don't remember that's the thing that always blew me away, was when I saw people who were addicted to the PvP specifically, because I was like, that surprised me. And like, the only reason I really want to go back is because they've enhanced the role playing even more, like the character creation and stuff like that has supposedly gone a lot further. Plus, now you're allowed to have queer characters and stuff in the thing, and there's all kinds of shenanigans, and like you can betray factions and stuff like that. All the narrative stuff has gotten cooler, but I'm still not sure how that combat is gonna go, despite the fact that everything else is so damn cool.
I feel like what your characters, they're as stiff as the bottle opener here. Like it's rigid and not moving, and I think that's one of the biggest problems.
Well, if combat is going to be one of the less important things in your game, and you want to get into creativity and you want to get into exploring the world, like, play a tabletop.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's...
You gotta get people scheduled for that, though. And you can't get Laura Bailey to voice people and stuff like that. That's the trick.
There's room for that, I guess. But yeah, like when it comes to those massively online games, like you could it's all about how you market it too. Like try to market it as a higher paced game when you have games that are just as on the same level, the same pace as it, that is already well established. You're climbing, you're trying to push a boulder up a hill, right? And that's where you see, it was, oh wow, it's gonna be 10 years for Guild Wars, isn't it? Shit, 10 years ago for them. 10 years for them. New World last year tried to do new stuff, despite the problems. They tried new stuff. The tried and true path, just don't do the tried and true, because the games that are established under that continue to thrive under it regardless. So why it's like if you're, we'll use Twitch as an example, right? Like you can come here on Twitch and you could try to be like XQC and do what he does, or you can just go watch him. You got to do something that's a little original to yourself. Otherwise, why would people invest in it when there's already something that's already there that's established itself in what you can do?
Which is why I'm excited for the storytelling, and because that's the part that is new.
And I mean, if you're invested in the story, there's certainly something to be said about that. Don't get me wrong, because as a lore junkie myself, there's certainly something that you can invest yourself into. But when it comes to the mechanics of a game, like,
oh yeah, they should. I have no arguments about the fact that I pretty much from day one have wanted MMOs to just stop being hot bars and to be action games. There's no question of that. But yeah, especially BioWare at that point was not quite there yet. As close as they may have gotten with Jade Empire at one point, and for some reason refused to recycle back to that system, even though that system was such a better melee combat system.
Sorry, I just happened to look over in chat and noticed that someone that commented about how they're one of the weirdos that say played City Heroes. I'm like, I don't know. City Heroes, I feel like was an underrated game and still is to this day. Like even that had something going to it that just it was unique enough that it was engaging to keep playing it if you it was something that you invested into.
The Neverwinter thing, you could create your own quest lines and stuff.
The thing about City of Heroes for me was I was really big into it back in the day,
Mhm.
and then they made their free-to-play transition, and they boned it up, and that was what ended up killing that game.
That's what did it for a lot of games. I mean, that's the Old Republic has that problem too.
The biggest problem was that all of the mechanics that made City of Heroes so interesting, they gated.
Oh, sure.
And they also didn't even go like they didn't go all the way of being like, okay, no longer having a subscription and everything is going to be microtransaction one-offs. Instead, they had the no subscription, microtransactions available, and a subscription on top. So then you had everything piecemealed out into these various things and tiers and what you would need to be able to obtain it, and the fact that if your subscription lapsed, you could end up losing things. Part of what really killed me in my experience with that game was how I had built up a character that had a very specific cross class that worked really well for my play style, and then half of her abilities got gated behind subscription only. And I also had built up a character with a very specific appearance and lore that I was role-playing as, and then half of her appearance got gutted and locked behind microtransactions. They didn't even give you everything that was already in the game and then make new stuff to hand out through the new system and sell through the new system. They just hacked up everything that they already had.
That's like worse than day one DLC.
Yeah, no, that is off. That is especially wow. That's awful. Yeah, no, the worst Tor has ever done is that, like, you have to wait a little bit longer to get a sprint ability, and you have a little bit less inventory space. Which, if you're not actually that concerned about like PvP, that's not a major factor there. The other thing is, you grab like a month subscription and they give you whatever is the latest expansions, and then you can just ignore it for the rest of the time until you're actually ready for more. But yeah, no, that's a fucking terrifying thing here. City of Heroes. I can't even. Yeah, I genuinely, I think if that had happened more recently, I wonder if that would have actually come into like a larger discourse than it did, because this is the first time I'm hearing about it, and I feel like this is something that a lot more people should have commented on and analyzed, because holy shit.
I mean, to be fair, at the time I was playing it, I was really young. I was not yet doing anything with games journalism. So it's one of those things where if it wasn't major headlines, it just didn't get talked about.
Yeah. So when about would you say that that type of transition happened? Roughly.
I'd have to look it up. It's been a long time.
Because I mean, I remember trying out City Heroes, but even then, that's a hot minute. Like, just trying to think of it in general when that would have been,
I feel my knees cracking just talking about it.
I mean, just to put into context, its original release date was April 28th of 2004.
Right, yeah, so because it predates WoW. I knew that.
So we're talking like, this was 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's hard to say. Part of it might have been like, if that's the case, I'm probably part of the reason that even listening to this, like, it's not even common knowledge for myself. This might even predate like my involvement in like games journalism, and I've been on and off in it for the last 12 years.
I mean, probably the only like MMO that I played that would predate it would have been Uru Ages Beyond Mist, because I was playing that when I was 13.
Yeah. See, and I know you're doing that. Sorry, Chad. Chad is, something about watching the show live and being able to see some of the commentary. Right. No. It might be something that predates it, but I feel like in general, like the discussion around games that were a premium like entry or a subscription based game going free to play is always an interesting discussion, because so many games tried it and failed miserably, or something about it just didn't transition. We mentioned Tor, we mentioned City of Heroes, there's STO, there's Guild Wars 2, there's name it.
If I remember correctly, City of Heroes and Star Trek Online were made by the same developer, weren't they? Because I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if I remember right, like they learned from what happened with City of Heroes. Oh yes, it was Cryptic Studios.
Yep.
And when they went free to play with Star Trek Online, they tried to make sure they didn't bone it up because of that.
Yeah, and I feel like with that, at least, they did better. There was still the element of like people that paid for the lifetime subscriptions, but at least for those players, there was a benefit to when they went to free to play. It's like, look, we understand that you paid for this and you expect something from it. We're still going to honor something because the spirit of what we were trying to do here. And I guess this is a great example of a developer learning from its mistakes and correcting its actions later on down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking of other games too. Like I almost want to just go and experiment with a bunch of MMOs to be able to do this again, because I'm so out of touch with them.
Mm-hmm. And according to someone in our chat, Argon was telling us that apparently City of Heroes is now running on fan run servers.
Yeah.
So we'll need to.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. It's impressive.
We may be able to actually look into that.
Yeah, I'm interested enough to go look for myself. So yeah, I'm down for that. Oh, that could be a fun nostalgia trip if there ever was one, won't there? Whew.
And that was definitely a system that was a little bit more engaging and active instead of just being a bunch of hot bars, especially if you built your own cross class.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the hotbar MMOs, I mean, other podcasts and other commentators have talked about the hotbar MMO. Our show's not at all modeled after one of those particular shows that talked about it quite a bit, but I digress. It's something that worked 2 decades ago, but we've advanced enough in gaming technology that we should be able to do more with it, unless there's something about the updates, there's something about it that's engaging enough to keep it as a hotbar MMO. There's got to be something else to it. And so to tie it back into Dizzah here and the whole Final Fantasy XIV thing, Final Fantasy XIV, as far as the action part of it, doesn't have that. I think what really drives it a lot is the community, because it's got a solid community. No one can say anything about it bad about that community. They are solid. It is a top-notch MMO community out there. It's probably one of the best, hands down. No one can really argue that. And it's incredibly lore heavy. There's a ton of story to it, and if you're interested at all in story, there's plenty of there for you to dive into and get lost in for a long, long time. And 3, if you just like the visuals of a game, it's a very pretty game. It is an incredibly pretty game. Like, if you want to just get lost in the beauty of a game, Final Fantasy XIV does offer that. Can't argue, it is a gorgeous game.
Oh, 100%. And they keep on exploring new areas that add to that all the time. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, you can go to the moon. And you don't have to be Elon Musk to do it.
Maybe just Bezos, then. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, when it comes to it, as long as people are enjoying it, that's what really matters. I know my own take on it as a recovered MMO player. I have a tendency to want to talk a lot about it because I have a lot of thoughts about it, about the genre.
Yeah, I go through spats where I need to like completely detox from MMOs completely in order to actually have time to try out any single player game ever, because especially with, you know, if you have a subscription hanging over your head that is guilting you, or they're putting in some sort of dailies, or they're putting in limited time things to try and reinforce the FOMO. I mean, there have been so many times where I had this like love-hate relationship with Destiny 2, where I'm like, I'm sick of you trying to guilt me into playing you.
Oh, loot and shoot. Oh gosh, we haven't played a loot and shooting game for like that for a while. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm thinking about Destiny.
Uh oh.
This is dangerous. Miss Michelle, what are you playing? What have you been up to?
Well, one of the games that I find it's a little. I'm a little late to this one. I'm a little late, but I was finally gifted Mario Golf, and I've been playing a bit of that.
Oh, nice! Like the one that you can speed golf in.
The one, yes, the one you can speed golf in. The one on Switch, yes, that one. The most recent Mario Golf.
You know, this game makes so much sense for you, knowing how aggressively you play golf. Like, I feel
what
like
are you trying to say?
Nintendo legitimately called you up and was like, hey, we're thinking about like trying to innovate on the concept of golf. How do you do this? Well, I have this thing called Golf with Your Friends that I play sometimes, and I attack people in it.
I don't know if you know this, but I consulted with them on the whole thing, and that's what happened there.
Hey, as long as you got some of those sweet Nintendo dollars coming to you for it.
Yeah, no, actually, believe it or not, it's been the traditional game, because even I'm playing it on Switch now, right? But I don't know what it is about golf games, but I tend to enjoy that. It's just a way to relax with gaming, because on my PSP and other handhelds, I also really enjoyed the Hot Shot series that was on Sony's platforms. So that arcade-like, playing NES Open is archaic.
Hot
But
Shots
no,
is not the newest, but
no, it's
I wouldn't
it's
quite
not.
say archaic now.
No, it's an arcade-like, right? It's not realistic. It's not PGA Open or Tiger Woods Open or what have you. None of any of those that's very realistic that you want to pull your hair out. It's more of an arcade game, so you have to. I know you'd struggle. You would struggle. I get it, but something about it being able to play, being able to go about trying to decide how you go about your shots and everything else without having to overcompensate for everything that you would in the more simulation based games. It's enjoyable. And the Nintendo with the sports games, they really have a hard time doing those wrong. They really do.
Yeah.
Like the Mario and Nintendo golf games have been around since NES. NES Open was their first one. So they have been doing this for decades. They can literally say they've been doing it for decades. And it's still it's still fun. It's still enjoyable to do. If you get friends to play with online, it's still fun to play that way too. So it's been great to do that. I feel like I'm being called out in chat now with Golf with Your Friends and everything. But look, I brought new game styles to that game that people didn't consider really. And now look at all the game modes that we have.
Newtonian physics consider?
I'm sorry?
Did even Newtonian physics consider the new styles?
Maybe? I don't
know. Last time I watched her play golf with her friends, she did end up launching someone into frickin' orbit into the skybox.
There you go.
That was, to be fair, that was Golf It. That was golf, but that was not golf with your friends.
So to be clear, you've done this to multiple games now.
Yeah, it was the inspiration for the Bowser ability is what it was.
Wow.
I think what was even better is the fact that she might have been streaming that too. I wish it was highlighted. Are
you an innovator or do you have a problem?
I'm an innovator. Clearly, I'm an innovator.
I'm gonna
It
go
was
with
added.
both.
No, because look, it's now added to new golf games. So clearly, I'm innovative. Tell me I'm wrong. Yeah, so I've been playing that. It's been just going through some of the story and just kind of just casual 9 and 18 holes rounds when I'm taking it easy and want to play something. And that's been my console. I also have recently got Galaxy, so I can also play that. So I suspect that I'll have some opinion on that, even though I'm late to that particular Switch title as well.
Mm-hmm.
As far as PC games, I think was it last week I did this? I think it might have been last week I did this. On stream, we were playing, we played a few different games the last couple weeks. Dyson Sphere Project is something I finally had a chance to play.
What is that? I mean, is it like a super vacuum or something?
I was gonna ask, do you like create spherical vacuums?
Okay.
I hear they also do hair dryers now.
Yeah.
Both are true. Does anyone here actually know what a Dyson Sphere is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna pretend. Yes.
You should tell the audience though.
I will
because
go ahead and
can't raise their hands.
I'll go ahead and just enlighten. For those that do not know what a Dyson Sphere is, a Dyson Sphere is something that is usually, it's under concept that would be created by a much more advanced civilization than ours. It's basically large, incredibly large solar panels that encompass a star and absorb its energy.
Oh.
So to dumb it down, and believe me when I say this is dumbing it down, they are giant solar panels that collect energy to be harvested and used.
So you're one of those solar panel companies that calls me all of the time and says, "Hey,
yes.
we can put insulation on your house."
Well, kind of, yeah. So as far as Dyson Sphere Project, you are a robot that is sent to an uninhabited planet that is harvesting materials to try to advance the technology of the harvesting to get to the point where you can build a Dyson Sphere around the star that at which you are at. If you've played games like Factorio or what's another great example of a sim game like that? Factorio is the one that instantly comes to mind. Or wow, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I can. It's a material gathering and processing and building simulation game, though.
Okay, so you're building systems.
Yes, it's a system building. Satisfactory. Thank you, Didact Gaming. Satisfactory was the other one I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, now I feel like an idiot for not thinking of I knew that there was one that came to mind because I actually got an angry comment at one point in an article because it had nothing to do with sim games, but I got an angry comment because I wasn't talking about Satisfactory in an article that had nothing to do with management sim games.
Oh boy, there's always gonna be one. Yeah, no. Satisfactory Factorio is another one of those. It's the animation isn't quite as detailed as those particular games, but it's still a fun game. The pick up and go on it is relatively quick. Like, it's not too difficult to learn how to process the various materials and get going. Within a couple hours, I had a pretty decent early system built. And if it was something of interest, I could see where people could easily find themselves gathering and building these large systems to gather materials and build the various devices that they were trying to build. It's not a bad game. And if you pick it up on sale during a Steam sale, it's not a horrible title to consider if that is your type of game. So that's one of the things I've been playing. I've also played through the entire demo of Electrician Simulator to fall in line with the rest of the job position sims that exist out there in the world these days.
Wait, I thought you were doing Electrician Simulator in real life, though.
Not quite. That's keyboard body simulator.
You have to use a solder.
I do have to use a soldering iron and a soldering pump. You're correct. That is a thing. I will be doing that.
That's very along the lines of this game, I would say, at least.
And I think there's even a soldering iron in this game, now that I think about it. But basically the idea is that you're a junior electrician who's learning from Papa how to take over his business of becoming an electrician. And you have to wire houses of like switches and outlets and light receptacles and such.
Wait. I have a very important question. Mish, so you said you're young. Would you say like the protagonist is like, you say like, you know, post-pubescence?
No, mid-20s, early mid-20s.
Okay, so yes, so they would be, you know, a Harry Sauter.
Shame.
So,
Shame.
From the call.
Shame.
I'm gonna eventually switch my stream deck over so you guys can hear when I'm playing the sound effects, because I feel like that shame is just yeah. Yep.
yeah, that's just. So I do have an important question relevant to the game.
Yes, please.
Can you purposely mess things up and like have a house burn down?
I have
because
not.
I feel like if you could, that would be extremely marketable.
I was unable to burn a house down. However, for the sake of entertainment for the stream, I did indeed electrocute myself. I did, without turning off the circuit breaker, attempt to wire up a light receptacle to which there was a loud jolting sound that came through the speaker system. And it informed me that I had been electrocuted and that I should probably turn off the breaker to prevent possible further injury to myself.
And this was entirely done on purpose and not on accident whatsoever.
I was streaming.
Yep.
Uh-huh. I knew what I was doing.
Okay.
To be fair, she's had to like turn stuff off at the breaker often enough at home. She does actually know what she's doing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That does sound like the sort of thing I would forget, at least.
I also was not a person that in high school was in one of those classes that like, by the end of this course, you're going to actually know how to wire your house. You should probably still get further education, but if it came down to it, you could do it on your own. I've gone through the courses. I've done enough of it where I've had to shut off breakers to do stuff. I know better. But for the entertainment of the stream at the time, before now the meta's out and everyone that's watching now that was watching then realizes I did that on purpose, they didn't know.
Yes, now the only risk of electrocuting yourself really is trying to plug in a 3DS controller, which I can speak to from experience.
I feel like there's a story in there.
It's a quick story, but yes. So, fun fact: Nintendo with the 2DS XL. I don't know if it's with the other models. The charging cable for that, it folds. It does. It's not a static plug. So the plug part folds in, and well, let's just say maybe you're trying to plug it into a port.
I see where this is going.
Difficult.
Yes. Okay, go on.
And it won't stay erect. It keeps going floppy on you. So you finally wedge your finger alongside it, trying to get it to plug in, and then suddenly your entire arm feels like it's on fire. But hey, your 2DS is charging now. Thanks, Nintendo.
Hey, Elijah, what you do in your own bedroom is your own business, and I just want to make that clear right now.
Yeah.
But please don't electrocute yourself. That's a little much.
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, because I literally like, oh my gosh, I think I just got electrocuted. And I was like, okay, it didn't get to my heart, right? It's like, nope, it stopped around my shoulder. Okay, we're good.
I'm sorry, but part of that description, all that I could think was that, and...
Yep.
I don't know why I designed it this way. I can't imagine that it makes it that much more portable. It's a tiny little lock.
Because once you started getting the prongs into the slots of the electric outlet,
it went down in, and it got, it was like instantaneous. I mean, I'm serious. It was like nothing. Hey, we're suddenly in. Ow!
And I am killing Dana here so much right now. Poor Dizza.
Help. I need an adult.
Right.
Oh.
I'm just kind of looking here, see what else, because I want to see. I want to make sure I actually cover my games here. This past.
Do you need some advice from a woman to know how to get it in there correctly?
Oh
She's
lordy!
trained.
Oh lordy! Yeah, I think Chad said it best. Live and learn, unless you don't. That's. So yeah. It was a free to play demo. There's like 4 levels, or it's like 3 house levels, and then there's like 3. They also have like, I don't know what they're trying to decide, because you have a house electrician, but you also have like electric device repair too, and that's like replacing speakers and LCDs and everything else. And that's like, if you're talking about what I'll be doing with the keyboard modding, that is actually much closer to what I'll actually be doing tomorrow. Like, same thing, like I was replacing speakers and LCDs and other components with a soldering iron. So yes, that is also in the game. It's a free to play right now on Steam. It's still just a demo, but it's got potential. I think there's a few times where it does a great job of explaining what you're supposed to do, and then there's other times where it's like, what the am I supposed to do here? You're not giving me enough to work with. So if they can work out those kinks, I think it will be on par with some of the other employment type simulation games that exist out in the market right now, since there's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, had a chance to do some more multiplayer Power Wash Simulator. I was recently on a different podcast. I was on Something Unexpected, and we were talking about simulation games on that particular podcast. And to help drive the conversation, we were playing Power Wash Simulator as we were talking about simulation games, so I had a chance to do that again and revisit that. It's kind of fun to go back to earlier levels with the professional grade power washer, because oh boy, you get stuff done much faster than you did previously. And it's kind of nice to be able to be like, oh, this is probably how this should work, instead of what feels like a garden hose on incredibly dirty equipment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was the thing. Let's see. Went back and played some American Truck Simulator. I have thoughts about that, because I was an early adopter of the core game, and I always thought it was so boring, because it's just like desert and desert and desert, and there's a cactus, desert, and it was really boring, and it was really hard to really engage with some of what you're doing there. Mm-hmm. With some of the new expansions like the Pacific Northwest, Idaho, and whatnot, I was doing a convoy. It was actually with Didac Gaming, who's in chat right now. We ended up doing a convoy on Tuesday, and I ended up going from SoCal up through Nevada and Utah up to Idaho, and the scenery that they actually included in that looked really, really good. Like the way the roads even wound and the scenery, like it actually, like if you were to tell me that this is what it looked like in that general area of the country, I'd believe it. It was really nice to look at. They did some of these expansions they've done a fantastic job on. So if I was asked to join more convoys in the future, I would be more willing to be receptive to it, because it was a lot easier. It was a lot easier to get involved into the scenery of the game. It looked really good. So hats off to those developments and what they're doing there. And I know that right now they're working on Texas and Montana. So they're slowly moving their way east. Someday there's going to be a Minnesota expansion. I'm going to very much look forward to when I can pull into Minneapolis, St. Paul. I've got to see what Minneapolis, St. Paul looks like.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Michelle, you just gave me a brilliant idea for a new snack food. Develop mints for developers.
I'm just going to let the radio silence speak for itself there.
But what would they taste like, honestly?
Probably a mixture of dry styrofoam, very sweet peppermint, and there's at least going to be a little bit of hint of tap water to get the real office space feel.
You sure that it wouldn't just end up being, shipping mint leaves because they're just gonna fix it in post?
There you go.
This is actually an empty box, but I'll tell you what, now that you've got it, let me give you the actual box of what you wanted for just 50 cents more.
Oh boy. So there's that. Also done more Civ 6. I'm part of a 8-player group on Wednesdays with that on stream. Enjoying Civ 6 still. It's a Civ game. What else do you need to say? It's still.
Has Gandhi nuked anything?
Not yet.
I was gonna say, who's your ruler?
So I'm currently playing the Japanese Empire. I think it's the Russian Empire is currently rushing away to nuclear technology, and that's a bit terrifying. But we'll see what happens. That plays out on Wednesdays, so we'll see how that plays out. And then on my own time, the only other game I've been playing is a lot of people have been playing Halo Infinite, and while that is fun, I think the matchmaking system in that is a bit borked, so it really kind of ruins the enjoyment for that. So as a sweet alternative to that, I've been playing Splitgate, and I've been enjoying that quite a bit. And for those that don't know what Splitgate is, it's basically it's Halo with Portal mixed into it. This is the best way to put it. Like some of the armor suits and whatnot, you look like generic Spartans to the point of you're in that type of armor. You're shooting at each other. There's a lot of different gameplay styles, a lot of interesting gameplay styles, including things that is sped up incredibly fast to make for really hyper crazy gameplay. There's a mode that like gunplay is great. The Fiesta and that feels really good, and a lot of the shooting feels really good too. Like it feels really satisfying when you get some of the shots that you get, and it doesn't feel impossible to do like they do in Halo. Lastly, to be able to have the portal element to it really adds an extra dimension to it, which makes it really interesting because it really keeps you on your guard and moving around a lot. And being stationary is probably not like it's really easy to be stationary in Halo games, especially if you're doing something like sniping. Not in this, because suddenly a portal could show up behind you, and then you could have someone shoot you in the back of the head. You wouldn't even know that happened. You wouldn't know they were there.
But you can actually shoot through the portals. I've watched her do that before.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. Yep. You can shoot through the portals. One of the nights that she was watching, I set myself up for a couple minutes where I shot a portal like high up on the map. I had a great overview, and then I was just way back on the edge. And then I was able to just kind of look through the portal, and it was a high top sniper nest.
I was going to say, sniping using the portal sounds absolutely wonderful.
It is, and it's a lot of fun, and there's a challenge too because they can shoot you back through the portal. You're still vulnerable through it, so you're not just protected because you're there. They can get you back, so it's a lot of fun. Yeah, see, and they were talking about it in chat too. The orb, Split Ball is one of the ones I was thinking of, where you basically have a bunch of bats, which is like the gravity hammer in Halo. It's oddball with bats, with gravity bats that you fly around really hyper fast, you smack people, and it's insane. But a lot of the gameplay modes are a lot of fun. If you're looking for an FPS alternative to Halo Infinite right now, I would highly recommend Splitgate. I've very much enjoyed my time in it. I enjoy doing the dailies and everything else, and it feels like a good game. And not only that, the other thing that really drives me to this one right now versus Infinite, the matchmaking doesn't feel broken.
Yay!
Infinite right now. Yeah, Infinite right now, despite all the positive things, the gameplay matching is incredibly broken. And Splitgate doesn't have that problem. It feels a lot more like you're playing with people that are on the same skill level as you. And that makes the game a lot more enjoyable because it scales with you then.
That's good.
And I think that's everything I've been playing. I think what I would like to do is I'm going to encourage everyone to go ahead and take a break here. So if you're watching live, go ahead and get up, move around, grab a snack, go to the bathroom, do whatever it is you're going to do. If you're listening to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms or on YouTube, we'll be back in just a moment. But we're going to go ahead and take a break here. So see you all after a bit.
And don't electrocute yourselves.
All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there for the break. And welcome back to the Newbcast podcast. Time to get into the gaming news. I know the obvious one. We're not going to get into that one just yet because there's other things that we wanted to talk about because it's been so long since we've done a show. One of the things I wanted to talk about because it's been burning and it's something that we talked about previously on the show here, and is always an interesting topic of discussion, especially when you have people that are involved in other businesses that are congruent, is the Twitch meta. For those that don't know, how do we want to describe Twitch meta?
Okay, so you know that meme where someone, is showing off their artwork saying, I made this, and then someone else takes it from them and turns around and shows an audience and says, I made this, without crediting the original? Not quite that, but close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for those that don't know, a lot of creators have been opting to do reactions to shows, which has been a thing on, like, say, YouTube for a long time, but like, oh, we could do that on Twitch. And that we've seen cases of copyright strikes and DMCA claims and a whole slew of mess. I think it was best captured when we knew things were going to go sideways when Gordon Ramsay tweets out, what the hell is Twitch?
Oh,
he didn't just tweet it. He said it live on show, because one of the contestants in his newest show, her job is she has a cooking show on Twitch.
Yep.
And he asked her, what the hell is Twitch?
Yep.
And it started, a meme going around. And what was really hilarious was all of the people who somehow thought that this was going to be lead to him encouraging people to stream his shows on Twitch and do reacts. Until, of course, he laughed in their faces and said, why would I let you do that when I can just stream it myself?
Yeah. So a lot of top streamers, I might have mentioned one of those names earlier, has been streaming his cooking show and doing the live reacts. And it's the Twitch meta because you want to see the reactions to the streamers. The thing of it is you are literally watching the show and you might react to some stuff. And
there was even a live stream fail of someone that was streaming the Lord of the Rings trilogy and had literally fallen asleep on their couch in the middle of it.
Yep. Right.
So there wasn't even any reacts going on anymore.
Yep.
The reaction was sleeping. That's definitely creative. That's transformative work. I would absolutely.
That is a very clear statement of just how engaged they are by everything going on.
Yeah. The thing of it is that really gets me on the whole thing is, as we're watching some of these reactions, of course, people are like, oh, but this is great. You get free publicity. And of course, this is Gordon Ramsay. He's just like, I don't need free publicity.
The thing to note, too, is that no publicity is free publicity unless you can prove it.
And it's really hard to do.
These television networks do not care unless you can prove it.
Yep.
And generally, it is far, far better in these sorts of matters to ask permission first rather than beg forgiveness. Because if you're not careful, you'll be looking at a lawsuit.
Yep. And
now, most of the time, they couldn't be bothered because it'd be like getting blood from a stone trying to sue a streamer. But as the Twitch leaks did reveal, there's at least some of them that are making in the millions. And honestly, the last thing we really want to do is put Twitch through the growth pains that YouTube did.
Yep.
And it's still going through.
With their various DMCA and adpocalypses.
Yep. And
because the thing to realize, too, is that Twitch does not have as much money behind it as YouTube does.
Right.
People rage constantly on YouTube's Content ID system, but at the same time, that system has made things far more manageable and costs them tens of millions of dollars to create.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, it's like that copyright system, although how abused it is and how flawed it is, allows YouTube to at least maintain its safe harbor status. And if content creators here keep on abusing that, Twitch could lose it, and then we would be really up, shit creek without a paddle. Because a lot of what we do here, especially for the game streaming content creators, is a gray zone. So much of the business model on the site is such a gray zone.
When it comes to gaming, a lot of people tend to forget that this is an incredibly young industry that actually cares about its reputation. The music industry couldn't care less. They want their buck. The RIAA is willing to be the bad guy because the artists are usually going to be the ones taking a pummeling, and they're not even the ones that are issuing these takedowns more often than not.
Yep.
There are so many layers of people taking their percentage in the music industry that are so distant from the culture, they don't care.
Yep.
Gaming still cares, especially when you consider the fact that as a medium, there is an immediate barrier for entry in the fact that it is active engagement instead of passive.
Mm-hmm.
Darn near anyone can sit down and either watch or listen to a show. But to be able to play a game, you do generally have to have at least a degree of, able-bodiedness. A lot of them depend on things like reaction time, etc. Part of the reason why Let's Plays ended up flying for so long, and we have seen some DMC apocalypses around gaming. It has happened before. I think everyone remembers when Nintendo ended up throwing a fit on everyone a while back. But
Atlas still does every now and then.
Yeah, they're good old Atlas. But the nature of the fact that it cannot be engaged in passively, and there's just so much more of a barrier to entry to gaming, means that a lot of the game industry has actually either given an implied license that they are okay with streaming, or in some cases, in their end user license agreement, have given explicit permission.
Yep. It's interesting when you see some of the situations where they try to go back on it too, and I mean it's been covered well in depth in other places than what we could ever cover here. I think.
But the thing to remember is that the music industry and the television and film industry have not given these explicit or implied licenses.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting to look at the fact that a lot of these copyright laws, part of the reason they didn't keep up is how quickly technology is advancing. Things like the show that we have on right now, broadcasting out to anyone in the world, the fact that you can have this kind of video and audio production out of just 4 people's home offices, reaching across the entire world in real time, would have been impossible not that many years ago. The tech wasn't there.
Right.
And even then, you, due to your activity on YouTube, MissMicheleJean, were much more mindful of DMCA than some streamers. You have licensed the music. You have commissioned the layouts and artwork for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as far as copyrights and whatnot, because just being aware of watching the YouTube adpocalypse, and I think people, especially people that are Twitch creators that have been around for a while, they should, even though they could claim some type of ignorance by being streamers instead of YouTube creators, you had to have watched the YouTube sphere too, and especially in the gaming sphere, and a lot of the influential personalities that were on YouTube and what happened there. You had to know of what was going to happen if you tried to manipulate and try to abuse any type of fair use here.
And something to keep in mind is that there's too many people that have, because they can do something, they do it. They don't have that same mindfulness in place. A lot of people actually forget the fact that the reason sync licenses, the separate license of setting music to video, was even created in the first place was because of silent film. And the music industry finding out that entire films were being created around known songs and getting performed live and enhancing them, and the musicians and original composers gaining nothing of it. And it took so long to catch up because you couldn't necessarily be in every theater at once to know that this was happening. There's so much production and effort that has to go into things. And a lot of Twitch streamers, they do put a ton of effort into their work, but they don't necessarily have in the back of their mind, especially because game streaming is frankly easier than putting together a full-scale production. They forget about the hundreds of developers that had to create the game in the first place. And now you have to think of the hundreds of people that went into making a television show.
Yeah.
All of the people that went into composing the music, all of the moving pieces that came together to even get these streamers to base zero.
Well, and I think there's that discussion could, like, a streamer even at our size has an understanding of that. You know, the start of the show has an original song that was composed for us, that has an original composer. The logo that's right next to you, Theoracraft, that was commissioned. That was designed by someone else that was commissioned to be our graphic design. Now, like, the overlay I did, but there's still elements of additional people besides who's on the screen right now that added to making this show happen. This show. So when you're talking larger scale, larger production, of course there's more people involved, and larger streamers, they have to have that too. They have to be aware of that awareness. I think the bigger problem is trying to do this Twitch meta, right? Of reactions to different shows, and if it creates any type of adpocalypse, those bigger streamers regardless will be fine. But what about all the smaller streamers?
Yeah, it does feel like another scenario where the big people can get bigger. Like, Twitch is going to defend the people that make them the most money, and make exceptions and work things out to a certain extent.
Yep.
Obviously, if something gets extreme and egregious, yeah, I mean, we've seen examples of that too. But
after all the DMCA claims that came when the RIAA ended up turning their attention onto Twitch, Twitch actually changed its own rules, because it used to be a 3 strikes you're out, hardline strikes never expired rule on Twitch. 3 and you were completely banned.
Yep.
It would never come back to the platform. They changed it after their top streamers started racking up more than 3 strikes.
Yep.
And it's partially a result of just how top heavy this website is. A ton of its income is coming from a very small number of people.
Yep.
Now, mind you, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they retouched that policy, because a permanent 3-strike system is pretty darn harsh, especially because of the fact that things can happen on accident.
Dear YouTube, take note of that, please, since you still have it. But
So,
yes.
YouTube does have a 3-strike policy, but theirs is actually quite a bit similar to what Twitch now has, because YouTube's have always expired. But where am I going with this tangent?
I would beg to differ on that, because as I've understood it, there are people that have had strikes that are on their account long enough where they were in jeopardy of losing their channel.
Last I checked, it was still 1 year.
I was, the reason I say that was one of the influences that helped, was one of the inspirations for this show had 2 strikes hovering on his account for a long time, and was ready to argue incredibly hard in case that third one ever came in.
Yeah, I mean, the point remains.
Can the ominous anomalous spirit voice chime in for a second
Sure.
here?
Spooky.
The thing that's confusing for me is YouTube has had react videos for literally almost as long as the YouTube has existed, and ironically, this has never been much of an issue. Like, typically, it's a thing that you can, like, if there's a latest show or something, like, they will yank all the pirated stuff as quickly as they can find it.
and they themselves, the pirates, have come up with remarkably impressive metas for getting around that. But in terms of like the core, just people reacting to stuff thing, that's actually one of the more consistent ways that for back in some earlier in the decade that people were able to get around, meeting new people and engaging with audiences with literally just reacting to everything from trailers to whole things and such.
Part of the problem is the fact that Twitch just does not have the same tech backing it that YouTube does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
YouTube, that content can get all of its revenue yanked by the copyright holder if the person didn't get the authorization for it.
Yeah.
Additionally, a lot of companies have actually sprung up, such as Jukin Media, that people can essentially submit as someone to manage the rights to the video for them and make it easy to get the rights to be able to actually do these React videos without getting struck. Yes, I know that you are making faces because Jukin Media has had a lot of controversy around some of the takedowns and strikes that they have done.
They sure have.
But it's partially because of the fact that their entire business model is around doing licensing.
Well, but even when you are the license holder, sometimes it's been complicated. Our own like theme composer had one of her videos taken down because she has her music registered with one of those type of businesses, and it was incredibly complicated for her to get everything back on that video when she's like, I'm the one that submitted this for you to protect. This is my work. Let me claim it. And like the systems are still flawed, and I think there's still room to improve on it, and that's why I made the faces that I made, because there's still a ton of room to make. I think,
but to go back to what I was responding to Elijah to, none of that back end is here on Twitch.
No.
There's no system for automatically flagging these things. There's next to no ad revenue for them to be yanking. The majority of the revenue on this site is actually wrapped up in tips and subscriptions, etc.
Yes.
And do you really want to see the day that we end up pissing off the film or the music industry to the point where you end up losing all of your subscription and tips and bits for that broadcast because it was tied into what you were doing with copyrighted content? I don't think anyone wants to see us poke the bear to that point.
Right, and that's that's another one of the problems, right? Because as it is, and we've talked about this too, Twitch already takes a 50-50 cut, right? Like they already take a 50-50, and even this is true of affiliates. This is true of tier 1 partners. They take such a large cut, and so to already lose half of what you're generating here on any of these channels, to lose like a full days or a full weeks or a full month's worth of revenue because of these React videos, it creates such a large, like it can be such a firestorm. And I think that's the best way to describe what could possibly happen, is it could be a firestorm, and it would be such a bad day, especially if you are one of these creators. Let's say you are like one of our co-hosts, who's not here tonight, Hippo. He's a full-time content creator. If he lost a month of his pay because of something like that, he would be royally f***ed, right? It would hurt tremendous. And he is not the only one. There are a ton of streamers that are at that level where they can do this full-time as their job, but man, if they miss 1 month, that's gonna hurt. That is gonna hurt something horrible. And some of these content situations, like the whole thing that sparked this off was speaking about Gordon Ramsay, which, by the way, I still checked his profile, still says always near food, doesn't know what Twitch is. That's still that's still a thing. His show, the distributor is 20th Century Fox. It's Fox. Like, thankfully, yeah, they do not give any shits if you are doing free advertisement for them or whatnot. No, they don't care. The only thing that could have been worse, that would have absolutely been the bear poke, is if someone was dumb enough to get the attention of the House of Mouse. Because if that happens, ooh, that is gonna be a bad day.
Yeah, Disney is aggressive about defending their copyright.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are.
All in all, best advice: stick to stuff that you have at minimum an implied license or an explicit one for. There are tons of options for music that you can get free or cheap licensing for. There are tons of options for videos that you can do reacts to, that you can speak with the creators to be able to get everything you need.
You know, that's the thing. That's the other thing. Like, now that you mention it too, some of these shows, like some of these content creators, the larger ones that are trying to do this meta, they are large enough where they could easily reach out to the creators of these shows and do the reacts with them. Yes, some of them are. Oh yes, sir.
Yes, I realize that some of them have the money. Some of them have tried, and these companies are large enough that they won't give them the time of day.
I'm not talking about the distributors. I'm talking about making the right connections to say like a show director and working on that, and not something that you pulled the trigger on. Like, it would be something that you had to take your time on to get all the okays with.
I mean, it's worth noting that there is a degree of contentiousness between the traditional show business model that you see out of like Hollywood and LA and the self-made economy.
Well, sure, because we are the direct competition to them.
Yeah, there's a ton of incredibly famous YouTubers that they are making millions and cannot get anyone in Hollywood to give them time of day. And even the examples of things like, music licensing and people talking about, how to go about getting that. Especially a lot of music streamers have attempted to obtain licenses, and they don't realize just what kind of money they're dealing with. Because generally, for a indie studio, you need to be bringing at least $5,000 per play, per song, per platform to the table to get them out of bed. And for major labels, you generally need to be bringing at least $10,000 per song, per play, per platform. So if you are, say, streaming the song on Twitch, and then you're making a highlight, and then you're putting it up on Twitter, and you're putting it on YouTube, and you're putting it on your Instagram, and it's a major distributor, you're probably looking at close to $40,000. And you can't use the song on your next stream just because you had that license, because it was a one-off. That's how massive sync licensing can get. While I'm not at liberty to talk about one deal that I had heard of between two very large companies, I know for a fact that at least one large company commissioning another to be able to use the sync license of a song for a video game trailer for in perpetuity license across all of their social media platforms, $67,000. And it wasn't even the original song, it was a remix.
Asinine.
So even these streamers who are making millions upon millions of dollars, enough music to fill their 8-hour stream, they would not be able to afford it.
Wow. Now all of a sudden I'm like, in Final Fantasy XIV, with the new expansion, they had Sia singing "Fly Me to the Moon." How expensive was that? Probably
very. It is worth noting that you may end up seeing some differences in cost when you're commissioning someone. It gets complicated, but Twitch streamers would literally, if they have that large a budget, would be far better off hiring a composer on commission than they would be trying to sync license their favorite playlist.
So to loop this back around to the React situation and what I'm saying there, what I'm saying in that particular situation, what I am saying in that situation, some of those larger people have the right connections to make a reaction to something and can make it much more transformative because they have the ability to work with the connections to get in touch with the right people to have like a true react. Because what would be more interesting, a react where you're just watching something going, oh that was interesting, blah blah blah, or be able to have, let's just say hypothetically here, that you have a show director. It doesn't have to be a large show, but a show director that was on traditional television. Wouldn't it be a much more engaging to have a reaction and to ask said director about that? Wouldn't that be much more interesting? Would that be more engaging? Wouldn't that be much more transformative and much more cross-promotional then?
It definitely would be, but again, you need to get people out of bed in order.
Yeah.
One of my favorite like React series that I do enjoy. Again, we're looping back to the video game industry because it's one of the few industries that still cares about its reputation because it's so young and will actually give people the time of day. So one of my favorite React series is actually IGN's Devs React to Speedrunners. And they send videos to developers of people breaking the shit out of their games. Those are really amusing to watch at least for myself as a gamer.
See, and that's an interesting way of having that transformative, because not only then are you watching the speedrunner playing the game and breaking it the way they are, but then you also loop back in the original development that was involved in that the original production, the game, right? That is such an interesting idea and approach on a video series, any series in general. And yeah, I can see where a lot of people would find that entertaining, especially if you look at speedrunning. Jizzah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that general idea, I think, has a ton of potential. But
part of the reason why I keep hammering on you when you talk about connections is the fact that, to be frank, I mean, a lot of us have some pretty bizarre connections.
yes,
But how many of them aren't allowed to act on it because of the public relations department? I know Hollywood writers. I know rocket scientists. I know actors. I know composers. I know developers.
yes.
I know people from indie companies and I know people from major companies. And there have been plenty of times that I've talked to them about things like podcasts, and the reaction is generally not authorized to talk about it.
Right. At our level with our clout. I think a big part of that also involves clout. And, you know, and that's the reason I'm talking about that now is because the fact that this Twitch meta is being used by some of the people that have the largest clout on this platform.
Well, clout is a factor, but also you have to bear in mind that there are people with vastly more clout than anyone here, any of us all combined, who can barely get an off-the-record thing. Like, Andrew Reiner and Jason Schreier have gotten candid interviews about everything from, like, what was going wrong with Half-Life to all kinds of other stuff, but you're not really gonna hear who told them that and what have you, and even then, they usually at best get, like, maybe, if they're really lucky, like maybe 6 developers to go on record out of companies of hundreds.
Well, see, but that's a journalistic standpoint, and that is a whole nother discussion. Because I mean,
to be frank, the journalism standpoint, though, especially because a lot of them are willing to maintain, you know, their anonymity, is generally easier.
yes,
Because there's just so many moving parts and so many people that you have to get to agree to doing anything official, that literally, unless the company is the one reaching out to commission the influencer to do some sort of a campaign, it's more than likely just straight up not going to happen.
Yeah, like seriously, there are times when I've been trying to just do research, like not even asking for an on-the-record interview, just research for talking about certain games, and I cannot get any information from it. It's honestly a miracle that some of the bigger guys like RaceFic get anything. Everyone is terrified to say anything because they know just how thick the legality is and how easily things can fall back on them.
Well, that's part of it, right? I mean, getting to that mess of things, and again, going into the journalistic thing, especially some people have traditional training in journalism. Some schools of journalism will teach you that there is no such thing as off the record. That is not a thing that does, like, if someone ever says it's off the record, no, that doesn't exist. That is not a thing. If you say something, if a source says something, that is material you can use. Now, whether they are anonymous or not, that is another discussion, but that is now information you have.
Okay, but I legitimately can tell you right now, I could not do that, or I would lose entire contacts and friendships in the industry. That may be what some school of journalism teach you, but I can tell you from a decade of experience in this whole industry, that is not how you handle things. That is how you end up becoming a pariah that no one will tell anything to.
Especially when you're dealing with things like entertainment journalism versus, say, politics. If you're dealing with things where, people's lives are on the line, that is a lot different than dealing with things where it's just about entertainment.
But
you have to
it's still
maintain friendships here.
Sure, there's levels of relationship you have to have, but look, disclosure is important in that whole aspect of things, but that is still a school of journalism that is taught and understood.
That school of journalism might work for you in other industries, but you have to be very careful in the games industry.
Goodness knows, in the games industry, things turn on whims.
While that's true, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in this industry that is always worth that discussion. That goes into a whole nother topic, but yeah.
But to essentially settle it, yes, it would be amazing if people could actually end up doing official collaborations. Is it likely to happen? At this point, no.
Yeah.
Because people have already tried and it's not happening. The industry's going to have to shift in order for that to actually be taking place.
To wrap it up, would it be nice? Yes. Will it happen? No. Is there, if there's an attempt to be had, would there be a ton of work involved in it? Yes. Do a lot of people want to do that ton of work? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to, right? That last part of it. If you really want to, it's just so much work that would be involved in it that some people, it's like, this isn't worth my time.
And really, all we can do is tiptoe around with copyright law until better systems are brought into play.
Yeah.
Which, all of the people that keep saying, "Oh, it's an unjust law, therefore we should be defying it." Well, guess what? You're more than likely going to end up losing your influencer career, depending on how much you're flouting it.
Yeah, there are consequences to that sort of thing,
yeah.
And Thoreau would definitely note, like, civil disobedience. Yeah, you're going to have effects.
In the end, the various industries of entertainment themselves are generally moving faster than the law. Look at the fact that companies like Monster Cat exist. Can you play any song that you want on stream? No. But you can easily license songs for cheap from various companies, like Monster Cat, like Epidemic Sound. So I wouldn't be shocked if some sort of television clip licensing system pops up at some point or another, but it hasn't happened yet.
And I think for the major distributors, that's going to take a long time too, like House of Mouse, 20th Century Fox, or the other one that comes to mind, Nickelodeon.
They have to have a reason, and right now
they don't have one.
We still have, what is Twitch?
Yeah, because even I think part of the reason that I'm thinking that it's remotely possible is you see a couple of these cross, like, mainstream entertainers cross promote with the streamer, and we see the success that comes from that, and why that it's nice. It's nice to be hopeful, but let's take we'll just throw out a name, especially since she was involved in one of the metas, Pokemon. Right? What she gets in viewership during the stream. Like, she was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the viewership that she got for Avatar: The Last Airbender is still just a drop in the hat to what they were actually getting on Nickelodeon.
Oh yeah.
IP holders don't work with that kind of logic. That's the thing, is regardless of, I mean, even to go way back to the modding days, the early days of modding on ModDB, Universal cracked down on like 3 different completely non-profit fan mods for a proper Battlestar Galactica game, and far as anyone has been able to tell, this was purely due to the fact that these mods were better than their very, very shitty free-to-play MMO that they were pushing at the time.
Yeah, well, and now the only good one that you can get is Deadlock. And, I mean, there you're dealing with NBC. I suppose that still ties back to Universal, too. But, yeah, that's NBC. That's at Comcast Infinity. That's that entire conglomerate. And that's messy.
Best advice, protect your career. Toe the line. Do everything you can to protect your own content. And if it's not yours, don't use it.
Yeah.
Check and then check and make sure whether or not you can. You have plenty of options that copyright is either not being enforced on, or you are being given license to, or you can obtain a license to. It might not be what you want, but there are options out there. And honestly, if you're really, really, really hardcore about it, I would not be shocked if some people start to get together to try and actually put together licensing services. But until then, that's what we're going to have to wait to see on before we start, dumping all of our social media careers into the toilet for the sake of being able to watch a movie on stream.
Right.
Anyway.
Shifting gears a bit, looking more back at gaming related news instead of the content creator side of it. Elijah, you're talking about some crunch culture situations again. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of that?
Okay, so Traveler's Tales Games, known predominantly as TT Games these days since they merged with another publisher. You know them as those guys and gals who make all the Lego games. All the Lego games, for the most part. But it has now come to a head with their most recent game, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which is a game I've been following very closely because Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens fundamentally is a better told story than the freaking movie it's based on. They actually did a much better job of it than the film did. They gave characters nuance and stuff. So I was very excited for this new one because it could potentially fix the incongruence between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. They have to follow the same plot beats, but they could maybe do some TLC if nothing else. But now it's come to a head as to the reason why the game has been delayed 3 times. That being, apparently TT Games has some of the worst management in the darn industry and made several major decisions that were terrible, including forcing their studio, like literally planning around crunch. Not like the BioWare thing where it's more a result of poor management in the early stages of development, but fundamentally expecting you to crunch, like actually being scheduled, just expected for their games to be crunched. And on top of that, they forced them to use an unfinished engine instead of Unreal 4 because they were worried about porting prices. Even though it's a Lego Star Wars game, you know it's going to sell millions. There's not exactly going to be a hard argument to get people to play it, especially since it's going to be open world, have shooting, brawling, vehicular stuff, and feature all the movies and open world content. Like, it's easily the biggest game they've ever made, fundamentally building upon what Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens was doing. And what's more, according to the report by Polygon, they were actually planning on using their own engine that they already used for Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. They had to rebuild a substantial amount of content from scratch, from the sounds of it, re-exporting it and everything to get it to work in this new engine that was missing crucial features. And I know you're probably thinking crucial features like, what, could you not fly a vehicle? No, I'm talking about things like, if I recall correctly, something like Boolean operators and stuff, like really fundamental stuff that should be in there. So was apparently not in there. And they've gone, I'm almost done here, they've now gone through multiple management because everyone in charge seems to be a rotating person of making bad decisions. including one of the original co-founders, who literally, like, the description of when they were acquired by Warner Brothers. Apparently, Warner Brothers does a survey with every new studio to see how happy they are right now. TT Games had the lowest numbers of any studio that they had ever surveyed. And then when they reveal what things changed in the report, it's staggering. Like, they weren't allowed to keep their phones with them at their desks. They were not allowed to just walk away unattended. And there are actually certain branches that still have that. Apparently because of one leak of the Wii U gamepad controller and their QA branch, anyone who works for QA at Traveler's Tales has to be accompanied by a supervising guard to make sure that they aren't going to leak something, even though this was a one-off instance.
So
It sounds frigging Orwellian as hell, and everyone is apparently incredibly depressed and demoralized, despite the fact that at the core of the things, there are several reports that said they do love working on Lego, they do love Lego games, but also, I thought the other thing is, like, apparently they themselves know that Lego is starting to look elsewhere. They're starting to work with other developers, and they're like, we used to make things that weren't Lego. How about we prototype some stuff from that? But a branch specifically built for that, for R&D and prototyping, has now been completely pivoted into making just Lego games. So on top of being crunched to death, they're basically building themselves to a cliff that at any point Lego can just push them off if they just decide to go with some other developer.
So here's the thing about this, like, as far as I'm still gonna be in the camp that crunch culture, it's ultimately publishers that really push this narrative that things have to be out by certain dates. And a lot of times, while you have a very vocal minority of players that do say very incredibly stupid things for games being late, a lot of people are going to be understanding if their game is delayed, so it's not broken. I think we see that in games like Cyberpunk, for instance, where if there was enough explanation of, if this game is delayed, it's because we're trying to make sure it's not broken, people will get it. And as far as the player base that's playing a Lego game, I don't think they freaking care. I can't imagine that you're gonna see a ton of people that are gonna be like up in arms that their game was delayed for Lego Star Wars or Lego anything. That it's gonna go, oh, it's not out yet. They're not gonna. You don't need to be that hard. And the thing of it is, especially with Lego's directive of make people happy, like, if they really got wind of this and that is one of their big pillars, I wouldn't be surprised if they did start shopping elsewhere for developers.
Okay, one thing you have to bear in mind, though, is that it's not really a matter of even Warner Brothers or like, specifically, the publishing branch. It's the IP that they're dealing with. That is the major issue, because they are essentially making licensed tie-in games.
Yes.
And that was the reason that a lot of licensed tie-in games back in the day had to be so rushed, is because you have to work in a very narrow time frame. So the thing is, typically accepting some of these contracts, from what I understand, was more a matter of the management at TT Games. Like, I get it. Publishers are incredibly problematic, and they are a factor in this, and Warner Brothers Games has come under fire for various things. But in the particular case of TT Games, the report makes it very clear. Management at this studio failed their employees. This is far more than just a matter of a publisher having unrealistic expectations or something like that. This is a systemic breakdown where essentially the employees are being kept in what verges on almost sounding like a police state to accomplish things, and being passive-aggressively forced into crunching constantly on projects that realistically, if they just had better management, could probably handle far more healthily. But instead, they just
how
keep
many
doing
developers do we
selective
see
things.
problems where management is the biggest problem? Hell, look at BioWare. BioWare had development problems because the management was just absolute garbage.
They did. It also didn't help that, again, that they were forced by... That one is actually more on the publisher as well as the management, though, because, well, yes, BioWare Magic is an incredibly toxic thing. Patrick Soderlund forcing the Frostbite engine on everyone was not exactly a great moment for anyone either.
No, it wasn't. What I'm trying to get to, what my point here is, like, if there's a lot of poor management as far as how to get these things out by certain deadlines, while it's on the management of these developers in this case, or development management, there's pressure from up top that is causing that, and it's executed poorly at the development level, and the people that suffer are the actual developers, the QA testers, and the people that are being caused to crunch, which time and time again we hear people that are speaking up like, stop doing this to developers, because it's going to come a point where who's going to freaking develop for these major publishers if they keep working them out and burning them out?
Honestly, the next sucker will be the one to do it, because unfortunately it's one of those industries that people get starry-eyed about and want so desperately to work in that they can churn people as much as they want, and there's going to be the next kid through the door.
While
Sad
true, that is true, but I do think there are more people cognizant of the problems regarding this type of culture than there was previously.
I think,
but not by that much.
well, and so much of that is based off of image, right? Like, these companies want to keep a certain image as to how they take care of their employees.
Yes.
And past that image point, they know that they've still got the supply. They still know that they can get somebody else in the door. They just need to do so in ways that aren't going to suddenly create a whole bunch of racket. Like, oh, hey, we're going to go over to this other studio to build the game, and now we're kind of exacerbating the problem, right?
I mean, just look at Halo Infinite. So many of the people who worked on that were contractors. There are people in Discord servers on who can actually say, oh yeah, at one point I worked on Halo Infinite, because they just went through that many different contractors at that many different points. Concept art recently went up of the game and showed wildly different things than we ever got because of just how much got cut and rearranged and changed for the course of its development. And that happens with countless games. And yeah, in a gig economy especially, yeah, a lot of us are pretty much just working with what we can get. There are times when people may even knowingly know that a publisher or just a developer is problematic, but they need the money. And if it's their skill set, they're going to have to go with it and make the hard choice at some point. It's not just simply a matter of people walking blindly into a chainsaw. Sometimes you have to swallow a very bitter pill, and that doesn't make it any better, but it is a major factor into why people end up doing this.
But then you have to look at a churn and burn in those particular. When you're talking about something like that, you got to consider churn and burn, right? Because if people are coming in and going out as fast that fast, like, that costs the company behind it a lot of money too. To bring someone on board as a new employee is not free. It costs money to do that.
Yeah, but
yes, but
look at how many other industries just go ahead and churn and burn.
Yeah, I'm sure it factors in to a certain extent.
I'm sure.
How much were we critiquing capitalism earlier? Pretty much the only solution isn't that these companies are going to get better. It's that smaller companies are going to start offering alternatives, and people are still going to get starry-eyed about the big ones, and then they're going to split off and try and find a job at an indie later. And then the next kid is going to come along going, I want to work for Blizzard because I love WoW.
Oh, yeah. And now you're not working for Activision.
No.
You're working for Microsoft.
You're working for
you?
Microsoft. Oh, boy. Oh, was that did we just segue? I think we just segued.
I think we did.
I think we did. Oh boy, this was the meat and potatoes of what I figured we were going to talk about this week. Is oh boy, and there's so much to talk about here.
What are you talking about? There's nothing. It's only the biggest, acquisition in gaming by a factor of 4 and change.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's nothing.
For those that are not in the know, I'm just going to keep typing this out for the little scroll bar at the bottom because I want to make sure it gets done because it's a big one. It was announced Tuesday morning that Microsoft and Xbox plan to acquire Activision Blizzard for just under $69 billion with a B billion dollars.
Before anything else, can I just say, nice.
Oh boy. There was a ton to unpack with this. There's so much to unpack with this. First off, it's really interesting because we talked about this a couple episodes ago, but the rate that we're going with episodes right now, a couple episodes ago, we talked about how Microsoft was talking about how they had to reevaluate their relationship with Activision Blizzard because of all the culture problems that are going on at Activision Blizzard. Well,
they certainly did that, didn't they?
Yes, they did. As
their relationship is now owner.
Yeah.
Yes, the solution is here's we're literally gonna pay you $70 billion to just fuck off, Bobby Kotick.
Yep.
Please kindly fuck off and just snort cocaine on your yacht.
For those that to continue on with that, what is going to happen with this newest acquisition? Don't forget, in the last couple years, Microsoft has also acquired ZeniMax. Thank you, ZeniMax, which is the parental company of Bethesda, which is another big developer, mind you. But because of this acquisition, Phil Spencer, who's currently the head of the Microsoft division, or the Xbox division at Microsoft, is going to spin off and have Xbox games with the CEO being Phil Spencer. The entire Activision Blizzard library becomes owned by Microsoft. Bobby Kotick is going to oversee Activision Blizzard until the close of the acquisition sometime in fiscal year 2023.
Gotta get a few more death threats in.
At which point he said, and quote, "I'll be available as needed."
That's like, you know what? Call my cell phone. I'm gonna be on the yacht.
That really implies that he is no longer part of the picture of this new Xbox games featuring some pretty large franchises, including
not just large. It's if I could just kind of real quick, the other thing is like Spencer has now stated that he's interested in some of the older legacy stuff. He mentioned freaking Hexen at one point. Like, he wants people to stop only working on Call of Duty and wants them working on a wide spread of IP. So like, we might finally, maybe in a couple years, get a new Metal Arms glitch in the system game, because I know the developers behind that have been trying like crazy to get the rights back, so who knows?
Yes, so yeah, Phil Spencer did say that he wants to. That's one of the things, right? Is there was definitely an implication that there's an interest in older IPs in this particular, in a lot of the imagery regarding this acquisition. Another franchise that pops up a ton, and I'm personally excited about it, so just pardon me for a moment, is StarCraft 2. That is another one of the pieces of imagery that keeps popping up around this acquisition.
That's fair.
Can we see StarCraft Ghost? Could that be a thing? Can we see that? Please!
Nova deserves better.
Right. Well, it could happen. I'm not saying it will. It could. There's a lot of things that could happen. Of course, with this, there's also a lot of talk about how the lineup of Activision games and Blizzard games would be part of the Xbox Game Pass and Windows Game Pass. There's talks about that. There's talks about the exclusivity of certain titles like Call of Duty.
Oh yeah, because their major competitor is the exclusive owner. That's right.
So as reported by Game Informer, right now Phil Spencer is saying that they plan to honor all contract agreements for third-party platforms. He doesn't want to pull, as he said, he doesn't want to pull communities apart. It's still entirely possible that we could see Call of Duty published by Xbox on PlayStation.
I mean, we've already had MLB The Show.
In a way, that's kind of a great revenge. I mean, they might be a competitor, but taking Call of Duty away from them is not enough to sink Sony. But man, they will be making so much profit out of every sale on a Sony device. They get to take their lunch money.
Yep. Yeah, so while they're in business to make the most money possible, because that's what businesses do, that's capitalism for you in a nutshell, it would be advantageous for them to consider to continue to honor some of these games. Now, honestly, there's likely to be some games that will be Xbox Windows exclusive in the future, but a game like Call of Duty, a franchise like Call of Duty, one of the most popular in the world, and go, yeah, you can still have it on your platform with a licensing fee. So not only do they get everything for what's on their platforms, they also get a little bit of chunk of change that comes from the Sony sales.
They make more money off of the licensing than they would gain in making a blow to their competitor.
True that.
Because what would it do? You end up taking the game away from Sony. Okay, they're making less money. Are you making more?
Not necessarily. Right, there's that, and I mean, there's still an answer to it with, like, say, Battlefield or whatnot. There's an argument for that. I think that...
well, you know, I know that Battlefield's a factor, but it's worth noting that, like, I don't think Microsoft's in a hurry to acquire EA at this point, because EA is very in with them. They gave the EA Play for Game Pass. They have made themselves very clear that they are most confident with working with Microsoft on all of this.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just like an answer for Sony to have as an option versus an.
In that case, SOCOM. Bring back SOCOM for frick's sake.
Actually, you know what? Yes, actually, I could get behind that. Please, I could absolutely get behind SOCOM Navy SEALs coming back. Ooh. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I would love if nothing else from this that it finally kicks Sony in the ass to stop just making cinematic third-person action adventure.
What, you don't like Uncharted?
The controls are half the same.
You don't like Uncharted?
That's all they do anymore.
Personally, there's something that I find very amusing, that if you go find old Sony PlayStation commercials, their mascot was Crash Bandicoot, and now Crash Bandicoot is owned by Microsoft. That's a thing, by the way. That just occurred to me because yeah, Crash Bandicoot's Activision, and yeah, that's now that's Microsoft.
Oh,
the other thing that if they take Crappy's approach on this and her view on this about how you can make more money on the licensing instead of just going mine, I think what you could see, and this is kind of scary to consider, is that the various franchises end up siloed in their own consoles more so than they already are, because Activision is such a large third-party developer, right, that it could easily get siloed into Microsoft. I mean, you got EA, right? You got EA, you got Square Enix that are still third-party, but beyond them, what, Ubisoft? Those are the three.
I'm still not sure entirely what Ubi is even doing anymore.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. But those are the three big third-party developers that are still out there, right?
Well, they are the biggest publishers, but we do actually have up-and-comers in the running. Like, there's Focus Entertainment, formerly Focus Home Interactive. They are actually becoming fairly significant in the European scene, and that's actually where I would recommend overall looking to what's coming next. Is there's a lot of European publishers who for the longest time have been putting out this smaller middleware stuff, and they are growing in numbers. They're getting actual physical console releases and stuff, so they're slowly climbing up the ladder right behind the giants, hoping to swoop in and have some more sizable piece of the pie now that there's actually less people fighting for it.
Yeah, I just there's a lot of that dragon mentality of mine. I'm really curious to know where some of that IP siloing will happen and what that will do to the layout of gaming in general, because there one possibility is you can get the PlayStation, which will have games that will only be on PlayStation, and that's it. You kind of, I mean, you see that with Nintendo and Nintendo games. You only see Nintendo games on Nintendo, and you see Microsoft games on Microsoft platforms.
The thing is, like, Microsoft is, if they keep making themselves as agnostic as they have been, that's going to do, honestly, kind of wonders for them if they can keep because, like, I'm still waiting for them to go show up on Steam at some point. I expect it to happen at some point because even like EA Play is on there. I think the Ubisoft one is on there. If they can continue to expand their reach and make platforms legitimately just not matter, that would be kind of incredible.
I think that's more what's likely to happen too, because even larger Microsoft titles that are like published by Microsoft games, looking at Sea of Thieves, for instance, that's on Steam already.
That one is Gears 5, Halo Infinite will launch day one on Steam. So they are, by being platform agnostic, they've found a way to escape a lot of the traditional confines that restrict most publishers in general that are bound to a console typically. They have the clout of a console exclusive, but they also can go wherever the hell they want.
Theora?
I mean, they have the major advantage that before they were a gaming company, Microsoft took over the world with the dominant operating system, and it was so nice when they finally remembered that they are on so many PCs.
Yeah, isn't it nice when you can actually play a Microsoft game on Windows? What a novel freaking concept.
Yeah.
How many years did it take them to finish the Halo trilogy over to PC because they were just so hyper fixated on Xbox?
So
don't get me started there.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about just the gaming culture in general. There's something incredibly satisfying about seeing like something about the console wars and seeing the big opposition's name on the other's screen. And what I mean by this, what I'm trying to get to is we've seen a little bit of that once before. Slightly different atmosphere, right? But 20 years ago, Sega stopped making hardware. And what was one of the big things that people kind of went, I kind of want to buy this over on Nintendo. They went and bought Sega games on Nintendo just to be like, I get to play Sonic on my Nintendo. It's almost like, I don't want to say spite, but there's just that taste of irony that I think people appreciate. And being able to see Microsoft do that with Sony, I think, well, I suppose they could probably do it with both Sony and Nintendo, wouldn't they? Depending on the game.
Oh, they've already released games on Nintendo. That's a thing. And
yeah.
They don't view Nintendo as a competition at this point.
That's
they fully
fair.
understand that they are in completely separate spaces, and as a result, the two get on well. There are Xbox games that you can link to an Xbox account on Switch.
That's true. That is true. You're absolutely right. So,
I mean, the hardware has always been a loss leader. The real money in this industry is in the games.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense for Microsoft to be like, yeah, we'll just keep putting games everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna pose this question then, as a final way to wrap this particular topic up. But what is the likelihood that this ushers in a new way of marketing games instead of the exclusivity that we see in consoles? That the first party publishers of, say, Sony sees how much revenue is generated by Microsoft and Xbox by licensing out their IPs to PlayStation to go, what if we did that?
I think there's always going to be an amount of equilibrium to it, because if you have all of your Xbox games available on PlayStation, PlayStation's going to say, oh, hey, well, if I can get one exclusive that's specific to us, anybody who's choosing between the two consoles is going to pick our stuff and going to be more interested in our product. Like there's a balance to it, but this definitely waves back in the line of exclusives aren't as important for a little while.
Yeah, like I'd say it's the point that even just real quick, it's like, I really feel like a lot of the PC ports that Sony has been doing have almost entirely been marketing, or a matter of, well, we aren't worried about this IP right now, so we can just throw this out and not be concerned. Because a lot of how they've treated their PC ports has typically been either they're hyping up the new Horizon or the new God of War, or something they don't care about, like Days Gone.
Okay. Theoracraft.
Yeah.
And we're already starting to see a little bit of that budging from them finally, more and more of both developers and the publishers accepting crossplay. They want to be able to keep these communities together, because one of the things they have to acknowledge is that other people are content.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a successful multiplayer game without players. There's always probably going to be a degree of exclusivity to drive hardware sales, because of the fact that the kind of hardware necessary is not yet in every single household. It's part of the reason why we are seeing such a huge boom of mobile gaming, because of the fact that smartphones became commonplace. You will more often see a smartphone in someone's hand than any form of, simpler device that's only capable of making calls and texts. And Microsoft and Sony are making games that can play across platforms, across iOS, across Android. Microsoft tried their hand at the hardware with doing phones for a while, but we all know how that went. Rest in peace. But
yeah, Diz and I probably have opinions about that. Although they do have that new service phone, the Fold. So
just throw in here also xCloud. Like xCloud is impressive. It's actually bridging the gap for lacking a next gen console. Like that's how I was playing the Outer Worlds for a while, because it just worked, and that's incredible in of itself, and opening up a lot of new options that again work on mobile, like Theora is saying.
Okay.
Sorry, continue.
Just to essentially put a cherry on it, well, I could essentially see the exclusivity mattering less. I only believe that is going to hit a point when the hardware matters less. And then you eventually just hit a point where, everyone's smart TVs can play any video game. Then is when you're going to see all of these companies shift away from even making the hardware and are instead just going to be focusing on being services.
Sure, I think that you saw attempts with that in things like Stadia, so yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately for things like Stadia and all of we need to improve the data network. I knew Stadia was going to fail unless we literally start to finally get internet service providers to start being able to provide worldwide faster internet.
They have no incentive. Why would that happen? Right. So I think that we'll keep seeing how this one unfolds, and I'm kind of given all the news around Activision Blizzard this year, especially being the Blizzard fan that I was. I'm hopeful that Blizzard, as a studio of Xbox games, once again thrives.
I'm just glad that this gives a very easy opportunity for them to clean slate and get rid of a lot of the muck that has made Activision Blizzard so discomforting the last few years. And let's be fair, since their inception, but we weren't aware of it until more recently.
Yes, agreed.
The only apprehension that I have is the fact that this kind of a merger will complicate the attempts to unionize, which it's one of those things where, as much as this may be an opportunity, and Microsoft has publicly said that they want to actually correct some of these problems, the real question is, are they going to do the frickin' work? Because we already know that even at Microsoft, there are a ton of sexism problems as well. This is something that's rampant in the tech industry.
Yep.
Not just the gaming industry, and not just Activision Blizzard.
Right.
It has gotten to the point where pretty much any major game company out there, I am more surprised to not hear accusations come out about these sorts of things than I am to hear them come to light. So we're going to have to keep an eye on Microsoft and hold their feet to the fire to actually make sure they go through with it.
Right. I was going to ask about one more thing with this topic, or this show, but I think we're there. I think we're at the finish line for the show tonight. But before we go and wrap it up for the night, this is the chance where we get to go around the table and shill our content and talk about what we got coming up, where we can be found. And Mr. Unabridged Gamer, I'll start with you since you're the disconnected voice. What do you got coming up where we can find you?
Yes, kneel before me and weep, those who are not omniscient beings.
And I can just mute here quick too.
Inform you that Second Look is now uncancelled and is now happening every other Thursday. In addition to the Stuff of Legends, all on Escapist. Also, yes, they sometimes let me review things, and, you know, I have been told that a certain Doctor Who game review was quite amusing. So, you know, feel free to check that out. Also,
Oh no.
I have a new video up on my YouTube channel, finally, about the N-Gage and a Lost Elder Scrolls game. So, there is that. And you can also find me writing listicles that annoy Silent Hill fans on Boss Level Gamer. Because, yes, there is a better Silent Hill game than Silent Hill 2. Deal with it, Silent Hill fans.
People can be wrong sometimes. Theoracraft, do you have anything that we can find anywhere?
I mean, I have the same name, Theoracraft, on Twitter, but you're probably just going to see me retweeting a lot of either fun gaming stuff or music things. I got out of games journalism writing a while ago, so honestly, just keep an eye out for me here. This is probably one of the places that you're going to see me most on Twitch, and here with MissMicheleJean. That's a little bit of a tongue twister sometimes, but a very pleasant one.
Oh my! Oh my!
But if there's any changes as to what I'm up to, this is probably the place you'll hear it first.
There we go. DizzahGee, what do you got coming up? Where can we find you?
Well, as introduced before, I am holding on to Black Book as a wonderful game to play. So if you like roguelikes and you like strategy and you like talking through that sort of stuff, and a heavy dose of story flavoring added onto it, the next couple of weeks should be pretty exciting. I'm on twitch.tv/DizzahGee. You can find me anywhere on the internet as DizzahGee because no one else has been so silly as to choose a name like that but me.
He's a fabulous thing.
Fantastic.
MissMicheleJean.
And as far as I'm concerned, of course, we've got Tuesdays have kind of been up in the air as far as what we've been playing. Like, we went as far as to hop on the community Minecraft, or as it was said in chat, and I loved it, the Minecraft soft community server. We've done that recently. Been also doing Civilization 6 with fellow content creators Engineering Tuna and Boomdaba. There's 8 of us total playing Civ, where there's plenty of banter and entertainment involved on that on Wednesdays. Friday, I'm also live on this channel, where it's either this podcast or other whatever we find to do. It's a lot of simulation games. We do some space games and other random things that might come up from time to time as a variety caster. If you're listening to this live here, you already know where to find me. MissMicheleJean, 1L and Michelle. That's true on all the contents on the TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Is if you see the name, it's the same face, it's the same banner. So there's that. If you're finding this on one of the podcast platforms, or if you're finding it on YouTube, you can easily find the Twitch channel by doing MissMicheleJean.tv to get here. You can also hop into the Discord by doing join.MissMicheleJean.tv to find the Discord. With that said, for the Unabridged Gamer, Theoracraft, and DizzahGee, my name is MissMicheleJean. This has been the Newbcast podcast. Thank you so very much for watching, and have yourself a fantastic night.